Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday, April 16, 2025 meeting of the Edina City Council. It is 7:01 p.m. As Director Benarod indicated, we've been conducting these meetings in a hybrid fashion. People can tune in virtually and participate in these meetings. We've been doing it since the COVID era, since the pandemic and post-pandemic, and some folks are here in person to share their thoughts with us during one of two opportunities this evening, and one is during community comment, where you can speak to the council about a matter of concern to you that's not scheduled for a future public hearing or otherwise on the agenda this evening. And then we've got a couple of public hearing matters as well that people will be able to participate in. Having provided that information, I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask our clerk, Sharon Allison, to call the roll.
Councilmember Agnew.
Here.
Councilmember Jackson and Pierce are both absent. Councilmember Risser.
Here.
Mayor Hovland.
Here. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, everybody. And we talked about the meeting agenda briefly. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail right now. We have a form of meeting agenda that gets published in advance of these meetings so the public can review it and decide if they want to attend. And then council members and staff also get that meeting agenda, and sometimes there's modifications of that meeting agenda. Is there anyone on the council or staff from a staff level that wishes to modify the meeting agenda in any form or fashion?
None from staff.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda as published?
So moved. Second.
Got a motion by Member Agnew, a second by Member Risser, to approve the meeting agenda for this evening's meeting as published. Any further conversation? Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. We have a meeting agenda that's approved for the meeting this evening. We talked a little bit earlier about community comment, and it is now time for community comment, and we're going to get up on the screen here the number that folks can call into if they want to call in to express their thoughts to the council on their concerns or anything that's on their mind other than something that's on the agenda this evening or scheduled for a future public hearing. But first, I'm going to turn to the audience at large and see if anyone in the audience wishes to address the council on a matter of concern to them. As folks know, and Director Benarod has indicated, you'll have 3 minutes. You'll get a 30-second yellow warning light, and then you wrap up your comments at the red light. And this gentleman that's with us knows that rule in particular, right, since he serves the city in a different capacity.
That's right.
Yeah. Good evening. Welcome.
So good evening, everybody. My name is Ryan Day, live at 6808 Chapel Lane, and not here to talk about the Lincoln-Lenneberry Small Area Plan yet. What I wanted to ask a few questions about was something that was on your work agenda tonight before this meeting, and that being the utility franchise fees. I figured it'd be easier to come ask questions directly than to sit through that work session for 2 hours, so here I am. So as I read through that packet, the introduction to that agenda item stated that during the 2025 City Council retreat, Council directed staff to evaluate an updated flat fee model and new percent fee to generate an additional $1 million in revenue to contribute to street reconstruction projects. Really, evaluating whether you want to do a flat fee or a percentage fee. So really about that opening statement, I had a question about the $1 million dollar amount, how that number was determined, why not more, why not less, and who really identified that number, right? So when I think of street reconstruction projects specifically, why was that specifically called out in the agenda item? Is that a funding gap that exists today, and was it council or staff that identified that gap? So just kind of curious about that piece. And then a couple questions quick about implementation. As I think about implementation and that fee, I wonder if there's a cap on how much those fees can be raised or increased annually. So when I think about like the gas tax, for example, and how that tracks to inflation or really the construction cost index, I wonder if there's any similar model for this fee, or if it can be increased by really any percentage on an annual basis. And then I also wonder if there's somewhere where it's explicitly detailed what these funds can or cannot be used for. Honestly, as a resident of Edina, it becomes a little hard to track all of our different fees, park dedication, utility franchise fees, what those can be used for, where, how much they can be increased by every year, et cetera. So if there's more information that the city can share about that, eager to hear it. And that's it. So thank you.
All right, good, thank you. Yeah, we just had a work session on that this evening, and we were missing 2 council members, so we're going to postpone this to a broader discussion on the 6th of May, I think it was, in full council presentation, so you might want to be able to set your schedule to be here. That might be valuable for you. Otherwise, we've got some materials that are available online, I think, that we can provide to you and members of the Planning Commission. So anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the council on a matter of concern to them? Okay. All right, let's turn now to the online world and see if we get anybody. No. Yeah, all right. So you want us to wait just a moment to see if anybody decides to call in?
I think Mr. Day spoke for more than a minute, so I think you're okay to move on.
All right, very good. All right, we're going to move on now. Our practice is that when we have community comment, such as Mr. Day provided tonight, the city manager usually provides a written answer online by the Friday following the Tuesday meeting, and then we supplement that information that goes online live at the next council meeting. So I'm now going to turn my attention to Manager Neal and see if there was anything he needed to address from the prior council meeting that was raised at that meeting from a concern.
There weren't any
citizen
questions
standpoint.
for us to respond to at the last council meeting.
All right. Thank you. And next, we've got the consent agenda. There's several items on the consent agenda this evening. Those items on the consent agenda to theoretically be handled in a single motion, adopting all those items on the consent agenda in a single motion. Is there anyone on the council that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda in its totality in a single motion?
So moved. Second.
Member Agnew moves, Member Risser seconds the adoption of the items on the consent agenda in a single motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the items on the consent agenda in a single motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Those 16 items on the consent agenda are herewith adopted and approved. And next we are quickly at the special recognitions and presentations portion of the agenda. We'd love it when we've got these teams from Edina High School here, young men, young women, and this evening we get to recognize the Edina High School boys swimming and diving team. We've got Coach Johnson with us, and do we have more coaches with us? Oh yeah, okay, thank you. I'm going to have you identify yourself in a minute. Why don't you all come up around the podium there and tell us a little bit about the event, and we read in the paper how you won. I think talent and depth was really an important part of it, and so eager to hear from you, Coach. You want to lead it off and bring up some of the young men with you, and you'll have you identify yourselves as well, just for the record. So. And then you're all going to be on television, so families can see you, friends can see you as well.
Thanks, Mayor Hovland. First, I'll let everybody identify themselves, and they can say what event they won. If they want to say if they were a state champion in the event or third place or whatever, that's up to them. So I'll let everybody go through. We'll just kind of just go through and kind of make a little circle, and then I'll come back here and I can speak briefly.
Great way to handle it. Thanks, Coach.
Yeah, we got it. Oh, do it that way. Perfect.
Hi, I'm Mike Riolo, and I swim the 100 breast and 50 free at state.
Hi, I'm Willie Turk, and I swam the 500 and 200 freestyle at state.
I'm Joe Hemberger. I swam the 100 fly and 2 free at state.
I'm Liam McAuliffe, and I swam the 500 freestyle at state.
I'm George Gapfrich, and I swam the 200 freestyle and the 100 breaststroke at state.
I'm Logan Bracken, and I swim the 50 freestyle and the 100 freestyle.
My name is Patrick Gabler. I swam the 50 free and 100 free at state.
I'm Reed McAllister. I swim the 100 fly.
And I'm Alex Lacco, and I swim the 200 free and the 500 free.
All right, good.
And this is our assistant coach, John.
I'm John Daly. I'm the diving coach.
Thank you, Coach. Coach, anything you want to add? Okay, let's celebrate these guys first of all. We're going to do a photo up here in a moment with the council members that are here, but let's hear a little bit about the event and the season.
Oh, thanks. Well, we had a great season. We were undefeated in our dual meets, and we were Lake Conference champions for the first time since 2022. We were section champions, and we were state champions. We won the state meet by 26 points, and I'm pleased to say that we are the first large class boys team to have 4 divers entered in the meet, and they all scored. Unfortunately, none of those gentlemen are here tonight, but that's a boys class AA first. So
Yeah.
very, very pleased. It really put an oomph in the diving part of swimming and diving this year. So we're very pleased about that.
Well, I think, go ahead, Coach.
No, go
No,
ahead.
I was going to say, I was just thinking about another state championship, and I remember Troy Stein gave me a hat last year that had like 200 state championship logo on it, and now I'm going to have to modify that thing, I guess.
Yeah, we are.
Put the magic marker
we
on.
are 208.
208.
And I always like to say whenever we come here that we were the first Edina High School athletic program to stand in these chambers 21 years ago. So always kind of consider this to be our home. And we initiated this back in, I think it was April of 2004. So it's 21 years ago. So,
Yeah,
and
good.
we like to come back.
Well, congratulations again, and I'm going to come down. We're all going to come down. We're so appreciative that you took the time, all of you, to come in to help us celebrate and help us celebrate you. It was great.
Everybody sort of angle in towards the center, get as skinny as possible.
Do you want us in one row or two?
I would really love 2, but I don't know if we can do it. Just go over by Julie. I think you'll be fine. All right. Everyone else is cleared out.
Hope to see you next year.
So these are little car coasters. They no matter where you travel. Okay. Okay. All right, thanks.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mimi.
Well, a couple of wonderful parts of the special recognitions and presentations portion of the agenda this evening. The second part is following that state high school championship swimming and diving team. We've got 2 of our very own past their prime on swimming on the team, but maybe they did that when they were in younger days. We've got Edina resident Bob Thompson and Edina resident Jack Warren. I had the pleasure of being with them a couple weeks ago. They made a presentation over at the Historical Society, and it was just delightful. And I think they've got they have a book they've produced together, and Bob will talk. Yeah, we can have that in hand for the council members. And Bob has just an uncanny knowledge of Edina history, coupled with Jack's photography. It's just a delightful sort of experience that I had on that Sunday, and I think you'll all enjoy it today. And this gives us a chance to get it out in front of the citizens of Edina as well and get it recorded. So Bob and Jack, come on up and introduce yourselves.
Well, I'm Jack Weston. I'm the photographer, and see, Bob and I got together, about 4.5 years ago during COVID. And basically, with the restrictions of COVID, I've lived on the creek with my wife for about 36 years. And at that time, I just really appreciated being there at the creek and taking pictures at the creek and just the wildlife. I just got a different perspective of wildlife at that point. And so I started taking a lot of pictures. I started putting them on Facebook, posting them on Facebook, and a lot of people were giving me a lot of likes on it. And Bob and I got introduced to each other when you were trying to get, what was it, the Heritage Award for Edina?
I was helping out with the, looking for homes for the Edina Heritage Preservation Award, and I was heading down North Avenue, and I talked to somebody next door to Jack, and they said, well, you got to talk to this guy next door.
Right.
He's been taking photographs. And
right.
we're
both history buffs.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the union. So we started, talking about the history of the neighborhood. You were really into the aspects of the historical nature, and you talked about it at the Historical Society. We put on a presentation, I think it was a couple weeks ago at the Historical Society, and I don't think we had enough time to even cover everything we really wanted to cover.
Did you bring a few of your slides with you this evening?
We did not.
We're limited to 10 minutes.
Yeah, if we weren't limited to 10 minutes, we could talk for 2 hours.
Let me
easily.
Jump in here. For those of you in the audience, Jack and I produced a book about the life on Minnehaha Creek. History, photos, it's gorgeous. I wanted also, we didn't do this alone. Among the people that helped us were a lot of city staff. Emily Dalrymple, planning. Jessica Wilson, we walked the creek with her. Jennifer Garsky helped us get this set up. Jane Lonquist, who was on the Preservation Commission, was also my neighborhood mentor. She's the one who really got me digging into this stuff. And then the staff and the volunteers at the Historical Society. And in particular, a guy I really learned a lot from was Bob Coteen.
Bob Coteen.
I always stumble on that name. He was the Edina Parks Director, but he has encyclopedic knowledge of Edina. But for the book, if you want to just breeze through it a little bit, if you go to page 26 or so, you're going to see the photos, aerial photos of this stretch of the creek that we've focused on. As Jack said, he was documenting wildlife. I was looking for historic preservation homes. And we decided we needed to do a book about this very short stretch because we realized we needed to focus. And I wanted to bring the history and also the natural features in. So in a way, I said to Jim when I first wrote to him, this is kind of a love letter to Edina. It seems a little hokey, but it really shows the beauty of this place and how much can inspire people to even go out and make a book. But anyway, we'd like to get your comments, thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think you should just take that book that you've got in your hand, Bob, and put it on go to the middle podium there and open up a few, Jack, for a few key photos there. Carrie will show you how to do it, right?
Projected somehow?
Yeah. And then we just have you hold it open. Jack, you pick a few photos that you really like to. Well, show the cover of the book first, Bob.
The cover of the book is an egret.
No, upside. You got it upside down.
No. Okay.
There you go.
Oh, I get it. Okay. So the other thing I want to mention on this book is all these pictures were taken at my house. I did not leave my yard for any of these pictures. We still got about 45 photos in the can. Our plan is to expand the book. We want to get it published. We've already contacted the Minnesota Historical Society Press. So that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, put it right in the middle there.
So that was just taken directly across the creek from my house, and that's a red-tailed hawk, about 100 feet up in the tree. Red fox across the creek, going up a snow-covered hill.
This is the one I like.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Teamwork.
Yeah, that's pretty rare to get a northern flicker and a pileated woodpecker on a tree right next to each other at the same time. So I had literally 10 seconds to take that shot. A lot of these shots, show them the deer shot. Yeah, show them the deer. This 11-point buckshot I took last fall, and I was watching a Vikings game, and a player got injured, so I stretched for a commercial break, and I was looking out the picture window, and all of a sudden, here's this huge buck crossing the creek. I have my camera on a tripod with a quick release on it, and a sliding glass door, so I went like that. I had literally 8 seconds to take that picture. But that's why I have my camera on the tripod. And that was shot with a 600 millimeter prime lens.
So,
And Bob, if you put that book back down there, I want to ask you a question so people at home can, how do people go about ordering this book? If they want to pick up a copy.
Can they still get it through the Historical Society? Do we have inventory?
we haven't set anything up with the Historical Society. If I could leave my email address and if you contact me,
Okay.
I don't know how you want to do that.
We can put it online,
Online, okay.
the website.
Otherwise, it's rthompson123@gmail.com. So as I tell people, we didn't get in this to sell a book. We got in this to
wasn't for
sell an
money.
idea.
Right.
It was about the beauty of the creek and the history and the natural features of it. So anyway, we're not really making a business out of this.
Yeah, no, we
This is
understand
not
that.
a business proposition.
Yeah.
This
It was
is
a labor of love
It's a
for both
labor
of
of
you.
love. We're both, it's really hobbies. Bob likes to write. I like to take pictures. So it was a good,
So what we
good
really,
marriage.
really like too is to see how Edina can take this and just use it as part of telling people about this place. As I said, it's kind of a love letter to Edina, and we'd be happy if that ever happened. I know that's kind of a pitch, but it's sincere.
What's that?
We just use this book to show people what this place is like.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when we show it to people, they immediately want to go look and like, where is this? Is this in our city or? Yes. it
There's
is.
very few people that know about this book at this point. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, we haven't really spent time marketing it. We don't have a website.
We're talking to the Minnesota Historical Society, we hope, about whether they want to publish it. We'll see. So this is, in a sense, a prototype. We put it together to demonstrate that visual images have terrific impact.
I need
And
you
little
to bring
s-
out your inner.
Oh, I'm sorry. And and big stories can be told through little stories. And that's what we really wanted to do. And so we're going to find out if somebody wants to publish it. We'll see. But anyway,
Yep.
it's been great.
Yeah,
We know
if
that
it
a lot of
never
these
gets
photos-
published, it was still fun.
What's that, Jim?
We know a lot of these photos were taken outside of Jack's house. Well, we won't give them the address. We won't give people the address, so.
No, we got a map with his house
He's got a
marked on
map in the
it.
book, so it's pretty, it
Yeah.
doesn't take a rocket scientist to find my house.
Okay.
Because I'm at
You
the
might have a lot
I'm
of
at the
bird
dead end.
watchers in your yard here shortly.
Right.
All right, well,
So anyway,
thanks.
Well, thank you-
if
thank
anybody
you,
you're
Mary,
interested,
for-
rthompson123@gmail.com.
Thank
you.
you, Mayor, for inviting us. We
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
very much.
Everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, guys. All right. This is a tough act to follow, Thomas. You got this state championship team and then two guys that did a book about life along the creek from a wildlife standpoint. But what you have to talk about is very, very important in our community, and we're pleased to have you here this evening. Thomas Brooks is our diversity, equity, and inclusion manager in the city of Edina, and he's got some good things to talk about here that we've been working on, and we've also got a proclamation involving something that Edina has been involved in for probably close to 20 years now, and that is Days of Remembrance with respect to the Holocaust. So, Mr. Brooks, welcome.
Yeah, Mayor, Council, thank you for having me yet again. I've been looking forward to this update because this has always meant that the project is moving just as planned. So that's really the takeaway from today's update. That's an update on our Equity Strategic Action Plan, and the message to you all is that the project is moving as planned. I will try to be brief, but really wanted to just give you an update on what we've done so far and what's to come. So as a reminder, this project for the Equity Strategic Action Plan began in January of 2025. It's an approximate 6-month project timeline, so we hope to have this wrapped up early summer of this year. The outcome is to have 2 strategic priorities for improving the organization and how we serve the public. So the public was asked to, one, participate in a diamond inclusiveness assessment, so a big survey that went out to all of our staff and then all of community. That ended February 28th and gave us some good insight into what we're doing well in the city and some areas for improvement. The second piece of this project was the equity framework, and I'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. That's currently in development. And then the big part of this is the Equity Strategic Action Plan in its totality, and that part is coming up soon. So the Diamond Inclusiveness Assessment went out to community. We promoted it to make sure that it was accessible to anyone that wanted to participate. But really, because of the types of questions that were on the survey, it was really intended for those that have interacted with the city in some capacity. So whether that's as a staff member, a commission member, a vendor, someone that just has a little more insight into what we do every single day in city government. There were 64 questions across 8 different dimensions, and we got 358 survey responses between both employees and residents. A majority of that came from employees. We did promote it pretty heavily internally, as they have the most insight into what we do every single day. And as you can see, this doesn't add up to 100. So that remaining percentage is really volunteers, vendors, and just others that have some sort of a stake in the city. What came out of that, which is probably no surprise, our biggest strength so far is natural environment. So that really hit at environmental sustainability. So all of the efforts and investments we've made over the years in that area, that really came out, and both staff and community were pretty unified with that being a strength. Our biggest area of opportunity based on the results so far is our built environment. So that really gets at really everything that you can see when you go into a city facility. So artwork, furnishings, that sort of thing. So really the vibe and the feel that our city facilities give as it relates to the diversity of this community, the history of this community, and what represents Edina in its totality. And then as a leadership team, a third area that we looked at just based on city priorities and some of the work that we have been trying to drive on a day-to-day basis from the survey was human development. So human development is really important. The more that we can develop our people in the city, whether that's staff, commissioners, you all, the more developed we are, the better that we can serve the public. So these were the 8 DIA dimensions. So there were a number of questions, I would say generally around 8 for each of these dimensions. And again, the strength was natural environment, the weakness or biggest area of opportunity was built environment, and then one of the additional areas that we're trying to focus on is human development. The second big part of this project that I mentioned before is the equity framework. So when you see the final ESAP document, the first section of this is going to be the equity framework. It's really the introduction. It's what sort of lays the ground for the planning work that comes after it. So a big part of it is our organizational profile, so just grounding ourselves in our mission, our vision, our values here in the city. So it recaps that, a timeline of Edina's journey on human rights and equity. So Edina, following the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the development of the Department of Human Rights here in Minnesota, was one of the earliest cities to adopt a Human Rights Commission and start this work. So we sort of lay out that journey as well. Equity commitments and operating principles. So we have embedded within this document, which is still in development, close to being finalized, our commitments to equity. So essentially, really making sure that it's centered in people, that it's centered in data, that we are engaging the public, that we're engaging staff. Those are essentially what our commitments and operating principles are around. There's a section where we are able to ground ourselves in demographic data. So we have been trying to use data more often, and so just knowing where we're at today in terms of employee, volunteer, and community demographic data is part of this. And then a glossary of common terminology. So a lot of the terminology is around diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it's common terminology that we use every single day in projects that come up, in community meetings. So this serves as sort of a glossary that employees or commissioners, that anyone can sort of reference to know what we mean when we talk about some of these terms. So the remaining ESAP timeline. So right now we are simultaneously working on analyzing the DIA results. So what you saw earlier in terms of strengths, weaknesses, areas of opportunity, that's just an initial analysis. So we're continuing to dive into those results. And then also working to finalize that equity framework language. So the ESAP priorities will be identified this month, and we'll work to develop a project plan associated with each of those priorities. So this strategic plan is a little different from others in that it doesn't just lay out what our priorities are. There are measurable, time-bound goals and milestones associated with each of them that sort of lays out step by step what staff need to do in order to reach a desired outcome. Another big part of this over the next few months is really focusing on communication as well. So we wanted this process to be fully transparent. We wanted it to be open to the public, which is why we made sure that that survey was open to the public and all staff as well. And so we'll be working on releasing and communicating the results and the priorities that come out of this, and as well as making sure that people are able to access our progress along the way. And then the last piece, I think this is it. Just wanted to make sure that you knew from a community perspective, the Human Rights and Engagement Task Force continues to be involved in this process as well. This ESAP was actually one of their sort of work plan items or within the scope of their charter. So they have been involved so far in reviewing and commenting on the equity framework. They were a big part of completing the Diamond Inclusiveness Assessment, and we'll be providing additional context on the results. So they will actually be reviewing both the equity framework and the DIA results at their meeting next Wednesday, which is virtual. And then the last piece is they'll review and comment on the project timelines as well for the ESAP. So providing feedback on like the length of time it's going to take to reach a desired goal, if the goals hit home to them as community members, that sort of thing. Let me see. So yeah, and then I wanted to just throw in for anyone interested, so task force meetings are open to the public. Again, this ESAP process was a big part of their work this year. So this month, they'll be talking about the DIA results and the equity framework. Next month, they'll actually be talking about a board and commission experience survey that went out. So they'll be looking at those results and just talking about some of the insights that came out of that survey. And then in June, for anyone interested, they will also be receiving hopefully a final presentation of the Equity Strategic Action Plan at that meeting. And that meeting currently is scheduled to be virtual. All of this information can be found on Better Together Edina. So we try to keep that up to date with dates, locations, times, and then you can also see meeting summaries on there as well. And that's it.
All right, let me check with my colleagues to see if anybody has any questions about what's taken place so far or what's yet to come with respect to the Equity Strategic Action Plan. Member Risser.
At some point, will there be a document where all of us can read comments that were submitted and all of that?
Yes, so so far, most of the commenting has really been on like editing, so language of really the equity framework document. There were some comments submitted through the demographic questions on the Diamond Inclusiveness Assessment. So the specific comments won't be a part of the final sort of report that comes out of that because that's not what the questions were asking. But we do provide a summary of some of that feedback that was received, just to make sure that community members know that we saw them and heard them, regardless of their responses to the survey questions.
Other questions for Mr. Brooks at this point in time? All right, yeah. I know that we probably all participated in those online conversations, and that was an interesting experience, so thanks for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, and then you've got one other matter in front of us this evening that's related to something that we've been involved in over the years, and that's Holocaust related. And that's a proclamation involving Days of Remembrance. I don't know if you have any comments on that in advance of me reading it, or you want me to just go forward?
No, I think the biggest comment is just thank you for recognizing Days of Remembrance. This is essentially a renewed proclamation from many years ago. The city's always recognized Days of Remembrance, but we thought we'd bring the proclamation back this year to council. So thank you.
And apparently there's no event this year.
Correct.
Yeah. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Which is also, we've probably been doing that for 15, 17 years, of having a Sunday afternoon event. But, okay. All right, well, I'll read the proclamation, Days of Remembrance, Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025 through Wednesday, April 30th, 2025. Whereas the Holocaust was a state-sponsored systematic persecution and annihilation of European Jews, Gentile Poles, Slavs, Soviets, Romani, Roma, the physically and mentally disabled, LGBTQ plus individuals, political opponents and religious dissidents of Nazi Germany and its collaborators between 1933 and 1945, with 17,000 people losing their lives. And whereas the history of the Holocaust offers an opportunity to reflect on the moral responsibilities of individuals, societies, and governments, and whereas we, the people of the city of Edina, should always remember the terrible events of the Holocaust and remain vigilant against hatred, persecution, and tyranny, and whereas we, the people of the city of Edina, should actively rededicate ourselves to the principles of individual freedom and a just society, and whereas the Days of Remembrance are set aside annually to coincide with the national celebration of Yom HaShoah for the people of the city of Edina to remember the victims of the Holocaust, as well as to reflect on the need for respect of all peoples. And whereas pursuant to an act of Congress, the United States Holocaust Memorial Council designates annually the Days of Remembrance of the victims of the Holocaust, including the Days of Remembrance known as Yom HaShoah. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Edina does hereby continue to recognize the Days of Remembrance in memory of the victims of the Holocaust, and in honor of the survivors, descendants, rescuers, and liberators. It is further proclaimed that we as a community will work to advance and protect human rights in Edina. Is there a motion to adopt the proclamation as read?
So moved.
Member Agnew moves.
Second, it's 17 million.
Member Risser seconds the adoption of the proclamation on Days of Remembrance. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the proclamation on Days of Remembrance, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. The Days of Remembrance proclamation is adopted. I'll hand this to you. I don't know where you'll want to post it up. I've signed it, so. Thank you. Thank you for this. Thank you. We're going to move on now to the public hearing portion of the agenda. And the first matter in front of us this evening is potential rezoning subdivision site plan with variances at 5100 Eden Avenue for Opus. And we all think, I think we all recognize that as near the hilltop. It is the building on stilts, as it's commonly referred to. And there's a purchase agreement in place, I believe, to have Opus purchase that building and make it their corporate headquarters. And there are some things that we need to discuss that the Planning Commission has already discussed and approved at their level. But we've got to make these considerations here as well. The public hearing will be tonight. We'll have a staff presentation. Addison Lewis, our Community Development Coordinator, is here to make that presentation. And I think we've got a team of architects and representatives of the developer here. I'll let you introduce those folks as well. And they may have some portion of the presentation they want to make also, and then we'll take public testimony. So, Mr. Lewis, go ahead.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So Opus Development Company has submitted applications for rezoning site plan and a new plat and variances at 5100 Eden Avenue. This is a project that came before you back in January for sketch plan. The site is located in the Grandview District at the northeast corner of Arcadia Avenue and Eden Avenue. You may recall as well that this site received preliminary PUD approval in 2023 for a 7-story, 136-unit apartment building with ground floor commercial. That project has not moved forward. So the new proposal is to construct a 5-story, 112,000 square foot office building that would potentially include a commercial or retail use on the ground floor. Opus has indicated that they would relocate their headquarters from Minnetonka to this site and occupy a portion of the office building. So in order to accommodate this request, the following would be required. Rezoning from Planned Office District 1 to Planned Commercial District 2, subdivision of a new plat to consolidate the 7 parcels into one, site plan approval, variances for building setbacks on all 4 sides of the building, a variance to allow floor area ratio at 2 where 1.5 is permitted, a variance to allow building height at 81 feet where up to 48 feet is permitted, a variance from the requirement that all facades on the first vertical 60 feet of building shall use natural materials, brick or stone facing the public realm, and a variance from the screening and setback requirements for utility equipment. So this would involve removal of the existing 4-story office building that's there. That was constructed in 1968. These are some photos of the building that's there today. So the current zoning on the site is Planned Office District 1. The applicants are requesting a rezoning to Planned Commercial District 2, which would allow for the ground floor retail use. That would not be allowed under the existing zoning of Planned Office District. You can see that the PCD2 is how a lot of the surrounding property is zoned there in kind of the red hatched color there. The site is guided mixed-use center on the future land use map of the comprehensive plan. These are mixed-use areas intended to serve more than just the surrounding neighborhood. Grandview and 50th and France are the only 2 areas within the city that have this designation. And they are envisioned for a roughly 50-50 split of residential and commercial uses. In 2012, the Grandview District Development Framework was completed, and in terms of land use, that plan states that the plan emphasizes a mixed-use sub-area between Vernon, Eden, Highway 100, and the rail corridor. That's kind of the area in orange there in the middle of the slide. It says Arcadia is seen as a more residential street with a range of condo, apartments, and multi-level townhouse types. Mixed use and office buildings are anticipated and may be oriented to Vernon and or south toward Eden and Our Lady of Grace Fields. Here's just another rendering from that plan, kind of showing what's depicted for the site and the greater Grandview District. In 2016, the city completed the Grandview District Transportation Study, and that plan envisioned a new frontage road along the east side and along the north of the property there. We kind of talked about this a bit at the sketch plan review, that's probably not likely to happen anytime in the near future because it would require a replacement of that Eden Avenue Bridge, and that's not planned for anytime soon. So here are some renderings of what is being proposed, and the applicant team has some slightly updated renderings that they'll show you. Here's just some additional views here. So here's a look at their site plan showing the first floor uses. So that commercial tenant that would possibly be a restaurant would occupy this space here at the corner, down here on the southwest part of the building. There's an outdoor terrace along the west and south side of that space that would be available for that tenant. Most of the ground level would be devoted to vehicle parking. There would also be 2 levels of below grade parking and 2 above. Just as there is today, there would be 2 accesses, one off of Eden and one off of Arcadia. The service vehicles would primarily use the Eden access. They have a designated space within the garage for loading and trash pickup you see there. They also have an indoor bike storage area and plan to install new 8-foot sidewalks along Arcadia and Eden. As I mentioned, they are requesting setback variances on all 4 sides. So this rendering kind of shows the footprint of their building with the required setback. So on the west side, along Arcadia, that's considered the front of the property. A 35-foot setback is required. They're at 21 feet. Along the north, along all the other sides, a 25-foot setback is required. On the north, they're at about 4 feet. On the east, 11 feet. And on the south, the closest point is 2 feet here. It's just this corner of the building right there. But you can see most of the building is set further back. And just a reminder as well, there is about a 30 feet of right-of-way there from the edge of the property line to the street. Here are some elevations showing kind of what the building is going to look like. And again, there have been some updates to this since the Planning Commission. I'll let the applicant team talk about that a bit, but the building will be primarily glass. Originally, they were thinking on the ground level there where you see kind of the brown material, there was going to be a metal panel that was to kind of look like wood. With some comments from the Planning Commission, they're now looking at doing a stone material there. Here's again just some of those materials that they're proposing. Here's the compliance table that's from the staff report. So this shows how the proposed project compares to the existing zoning of Planned Office District 1, the proposed zoning standards for Planned Commercial District 2, as well as how it compares to the PUD that was previously approved in 2023. And the items in bold there are all the items where variances are being requested. The majority of the staff report is devoted to analyzing each individual variance, and kind of to summarize, staff generally finds those variances to be reasonable. The requests for things like the setback, height, floor area ratio, we found those are generally consistent with a lot of recently approved projects within the area, including the project that was recently approved for this site. So just as a reminder, with each request, we have kind of different levels of discretion for each. So with the rezoning, the city has quite a bit of discretion, but when we're looking at the variances, we have a little less discretion. We're really looking at do those requests meet the statutory criteria. And then with site plan review, we're really just looking at is the code being met. So staff is recommending approval of this project. Tonight, though, we're just recommending that you close the public hearing at noon on Sunday, April 27th, and continue action to Tuesday, May 6th. The Planning Commission considered this item on March 26th and voted 8-1 to recommend approval of the project with the following conditions. One, that the applicant reconsider the site plan to provide a safer pedestrian and bike access to the east entrance of the building along Edina Avenue. Continue the sidewalk along the commercial space of the building to the east entrance and south to provide a connection to the sidewalk on Edina Avenue. Revise the building materials plan to provide natural-looking building materials on the ground level at the garage entrances. And I think you'll see tonight from their presentation that they have a plan in place to address all three of those conditions. The last thing I just wanted to make you aware of tonight is that when Highway 100 was originally built, MnDOT condemned the roadways surrounding this property and restricted access along the areas shown in red there on the screen. And after the highway project was completed, MnDOT determined they no longer needed control of those roadways, and they transferred those rights back to the city, which included control of a no-access easement around this property. Obviously, the applicant would like that removed. City staff does not see any reason to keep this and would recommend releasing them of that no-access restriction. Our respective attorneys are still kind of working on the best way to resolve that, but I just want to make you aware that that's something that will likely come before you in the future. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions, but the applicant team is here as well to give their presentation.
All right. Anybody has questions for Mr. Lewis? Yes. Member Risser.
Can you go back to the pyramid of discretion? One of the things that I've been pushing back against is votes where we as council are being asked to, in one single vote, go all the way across the pyramid. And I think this is not a PUD. This could be separate votes, so we could use our vote in a way that is logical. So I just want to get that out there.
Certainly, and I think, staff is recommending approval of all the requests. If, there was a particular variance that you weren't comfortable with, you could approve the other items, pull out that variance, and make a separate motion if you were to, wanted to deny a specific thing. But you're right, they could be separate motions.
Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Lewis?
Thank you. Why is it 7 parcels today?
That's a great question. I don't know how that came to be.
I don't know either.
Okay, so we just never had gone through this process of combining the lots in previous reviews, basically. So we're just doing a little bit of cleanup with that specific line item.
Correct. That building's been there since 1968. So, yeah, they maybe just decided to approve that building with it as 7 parcels since they were all under common ownership. Sometimes some cities will do that. But yeah, it's kind of a cleanup item.
Okay, thank you. And then if we could go back to the compliance table, yeah, this one. So what was confusing to me, and I think maybe this is just my misunderstanding in how I'm reading this. So I'm looking at the second setback, so the side street to Eden Avenue. Under the PUD, it was 10 feet, which is 34 feet from, is the 34 feet from curb? Because I guess where I'm confused then is like, where are we losing 6 feet in the proposed? But maybe I'm being too nitpicky, but I just was not tracing that.
That's a great question. Hang on one sec.
Okay. And the reason being, I really do like to kind of compare to what had been approved, what were we comfortable with at one point, and how far off are we from that. And so if we're confident in the 10 feet to the 2 feet, that is plenty sufficient for me to just understand that. But I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a discrepancy there.
Yeah, that's a good question. I believe, the setback would have been 10 feet, and I think the intent there was that it was 34 feet to the curb. We could go back and verify that and come back at the next meeting to maybe try to find out why there's that little discrepancy.
Okay. So the proposed, though, we're confident in what's there of the 21 feet, the 2 feet, the 4 feet, the 11 feet.
Correct. Those are the setbacks from the property lines.
Okay. Thank you. Those were the only logistic-based questions I had.
For me, I think you could just stay right on that compliance table, because one of the first things I wrote down was, and I couldn't remember before I saw the compliance table, that 7 stories that was approved on the prior PUD for an apartment building really is it was a foot taller that was approved than what we have in front of us now as a possibility at 5 stories and 81 feet. So we've got higher ceilings, obviously.
Yep.
Bigger, floor plates with more space floor to floor.
Exactly, yeah. With the PUD for the apartment building, they weren't complying with the 20-foot first floor ceiling requirement. And this project, they are. And I guess I would assume, the other floors have greater ceiling heights as well to get you to about the same height as they were at with the 7 stories.
And then the apartment building also involved a floor area ratio of 3.2 as opposed to 1.5, and now it's being proposed at 2.
Right, so the massing of this building is quite a bit less.
Yep.
One thing too, you were asking about the setback along Eden being 2 feet compared to what was previously approved with the apartment. This slide too shows with the apartment that was 10 feet along that whole length of Eden, whereas with this project.
It has that little corner piece that sticks in. Otherwise, it's 17 feet, I think.
Right, it's just the corner of that building, but yeah, most of it is really set back. And
it's 2 feet from the lot line as opposed to, do we know how far that is from the street on that corner? Or the curb, back of the curb?
Well, it would be about 32 feet.
32 feet.
32
I think
feet
maybe
forward.
that was in the compliance table too. It was maybe the same question asked differently than what member Agnew asked. Okay.
And then, really where the height of the building is, where the 5-story is this, this dashed line back here. So that's further setback.
Okay. All right. And then would you walk through those? I guess an applicant will do it for us, but I think it'd be good to have your input too on the 3 conditions that were imposed by the Planning Commission, as long as you get this site plan up there. Maybe you want a different site plan to show us what they were thinking about and what you think they've done from an applicant standpoint to address those 3 concerns of the Planning Commission.
Yeah, so their presentation will show it better than kind of any renderings I have, but essentially what they did was the Planning Commission wanted access, better bike and pedestrian access to the site from Eden, because really your kind of only option was to just walk in through the parking area. So they've added a sidewalk that comes down here, and then the other thing was to kind of continue or I guess provide access to this patio from the sidewalk as well. So they've got kind of a second walkway that connects to Eden. And then the other was changing out the building materials. They've made where you kind of see the brown, this was going to be a wood-looking metal panel. And then here along the entrance to the parking ramp was concrete. This they're showing now is all like a stone material.
Okay, it'll be a wood appearing panel. I would think that would be somewhat akin to what we saw in the Bower. Yeah, you remember that? I mean, I see it weekly, so what I'm thinking of as a frame of reference. Okay, that's all the questions I have for now. Member Agnew has another question for you, though.
If we can go back up to that overlay of the setback. So we have noted, I think down in that like lower corner point where it's 2 feet, is it then similar to 2 feet, kind of just northeast of that where the parking entrance is? Yeah, like right there-ish. Is that also like similar to 2 feet?
Well, and that's just the parking area, or part of the. It's just like a paved area. That's not the
so it's
building.
just flat.
Yeah, this is the setback to the actual building. This is just where you're driving into the parking area. So like there isn't any building in this kind of triangular piece here.
Thank you.
If that helps. Going to see if I have a rendering that shows that better. It's like this. So like this corner of this building is what's at 2 feet, and then this is all open in here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And who do we have with us from the Opus Development Corporation?
We have Nick Bernan, Bob Loken, and Matthew Axman.
Okay. Mr. Bernan, good to see you. Mr. Loken, Mr. Axman, welcome back.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Nice to see you all again. My name is Nick Bernan with Opus Development. I'm joined again by Bob Loken and Matt Axman from ESG. Thank you, Addison. Appreciate the presentation. We'll run through a little more detail, some updated renderings, and then we'll focus as well on some of the comments that we received from Planning Commission as well as sketch plan. We've received a lot of really great comments that have enhanced the building quite a bit. We're excited to show that tonight, and then we're here to answer any questions and have discussion. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matt Axman to run through some of those changes.
All right, thanks, Mr. Bernan.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so we're going to quickly run through the couple of meetings we've had since you first saw this during sketch plan, where it was this lovely blue box on the left here. So from sketch plan comments to Planning Commission, a couple of the major ones were shifting the building and the podium itself further east to really increase the setback along Arcadia. So we've went ahead and pushed the podium portion back 17 feet, and then additionally the building proper an additional 4 feet. And then we additionally recessed that parking podium, as noted kind of there on letter B there. Really what we kind of found in talking to folks is that the real focus and activity really wanted to be on Arcadia versus what we were previously showing as that pocket park on the corner. So we've really started to focus the energy and the gravity of the architectural expression to Arcadia. Additionally, we added, again, just to kind of further that Arcadia connection, added balconies to that southwest corner of the building there. And then obviously articulated all the facades with the building material from previous. And then to compound a little bit on some of Addison's comments, so from Planning Commission now to City Council, that upper left image where we were previously showing a portion of the building kind of touching grade with the silver metal panel, we've now addressed that material up with obviously a more natural warm material as noted in the variants, and then obviously hoping to kind of bypass that with this move here. So we're showing more of like a limestone colored kind of Casota stone material there in a more unique pattern. And then additionally, kind of all the way across this podium component, we've added that material. And then on the lower kind of two images, you can see how we've changed the way that the building is addressed from the east if you're kind of coming across the Eden Bridge there. So we've moved the primary entry to that retail component, that commercial component, over to the side, so that if you're kind of making your way westbound, there's a kind of clear indication of where to go. So there's opportunity for additional signage, and then obviously the front door there and the addition of the 2 sidewalks, just to give a little bit more wayfinding for folks coming from that direction. And then again, just the site plan that Addison had previously pulled up, noting specifically letters J and letter I there for the additional sidewalks as egress into the building. And then this is just an additional kind of macro site plan, just in case we want to talk about just proximity to the other kind of urban built environment as it relates to the building. This is an architectural diagram really just to kind of help us all get on the same sort of vocabulary and lexicon as it relates to the building. So there's a couple of nomenclature things that we've been using. For instance, this green piece, we've really started to kind of coin this as our dock. It's a portion of the building that comes out, it tucks underneath, and really kind of celebrates the history of Minnesota. And we really like the idea of this being this really natural element, so now clad with a natural warm material and kind of celebrating itself by sticking out into this kind of sea of greenery. And then additionally, the building on sticks, we're still celebrating that with our Palo T expression on the southeast there. We've been working with Damon Farber Landscape Architects, and we've really started to hone in some of our planting medium along the Arcadia facade there, and we're really just loving the verdant nature of this with various pollinator mixtures and shrubs, and introducing some additional color into the planting palette. And we still obviously have maintained this kind of pocket park component on the southern portion of the site. We pushed that sidewalk actually out a little bit further, so there's a little bit of a crest. So you can get to both of the crosswalks, but it makes it a little bit more safe for pedestrians. And then there's a little area kind of tucked into the topography there for some additional respite. And then here we'll just look through some additional imagery and renderings, again, really showcasing the dock piece as it relates and really juxtaposes the glass building above it. This would be the primary entry off of Arcadia. There's a series of cascading steps with integrated seating. You can see there's also opportunity along this wrapping kind of porch component for additional seating. There we go. This is just a more zoomed in image of the kind of previous one from the entry condition coming from the Eden Bridge. And then lastly here, just a kind of golden hour kind of showcasing again this dock element coming out and greeting the street, and then just the kind of plethora of greenscape that we've developed with Damon Farber to really capture the architecture as it meets the ground. That's what we got.
Yeah, thank you. Questions from council members or comments at this point in time? Member Risser.
Thank you for the presentation. And I did listen to the Planning Commission. And one thing that I do want to say is I do appreciate how you are sizing this for your needs. And I think it's important to, not necessarily say, oh, you should be going higher. You should have more floors. You should, because you know what you need. So I wanted to get that out there. My one concern is the impervious surfaces, and if there's anything you can do to reduce that. And just context, the work session that we had before you gave your presentation for your previous plan focused on our water quality. And one of the things that we're doing, and all of those buildings that Mr. Lewis showed where we have all these setbacks that we've done, part of the reason we don't have very great water quality is we keep granting a lot of setbacks. We get more impervious surface. And so if there's anything you can do, and it looks like you're trying a lot, but you're still, covering a lot of that space. So that's my only concern.
Thank you.
Member Agnew, anything at this point in time?
I think my immediate reaction, especially when I'm looking at this visual, is I'm really excited about the landscaping. especially for this corner that feels inviting into the overall site. So really nice work on at least the visuals related to the landscaping. I will admit I was maybe a little, I don't know what word. When we saw this before, I was like, it's just a big box. And now it's a big glass box. So it's still kind of box-like. And I don't know if there's a way to get around that, because I know that you're trying to optimize the space. So I'm just trying to like internally come to like, I'm being okay with that, right? Because I guess I don't know what else I would recommend adding from like a different layering perspective. But I do really appreciate the inclusion of the transparency and glass. And I do feel like overall this feels like a modern kind of addition to the area. So I know that wasn't even really good feedback, but that was just, again, my initial reaction. But love the green space that you're doing. I did have one question. This maybe actually routes over to Director Milner. But when we think about that overall connectivity to this area, and I appreciated you including that visual in this as well, will we probably take this on at a later point, but do we think about like where we might be adding in a crosswalk or enhancing that pedestrian experience beyond what we already have today? I don't know if that's something you can speak to this early in the process.
Well, we've done a lot right there at the roundabout. There's 3 crosswalks there. I probably wouldn't add anything towards the bridge because pedestrians have no destinations there. And then I think the one thing we want this project to work with us and MnDOT is that the MnDOT off-ramp between Hilltop and this project. We want to, so just off the screen to the north, if you can pull it down a little bit, we want to definitely enhance that portion. And then in the future, you can see that one crosswalk way on the top by the Heart Link there. I think that one needs to be enhanced at some point too. So we're always looking for those pieces to make things better for crossings.
That's where I was really thinking about it, is kind of extending the bridge that we have, the pedestrian bridge, and how if then they route up and then walk down, and kind of what that full experience looks like. Just knowing that the main pedestrian entrance is there on Arcadia, just trying to think through that experience of where are these pedestrians then coming from and how do they navigate to that portion of the site.
I think there's one more piece, is what are we going to do on the other side of the street with our own property? So there's a good opportunity when that one comes that we might have a nice crosswalk right on that northwest corner of this facility with whatever is done on that site, and that could be a great time to look at those additional things.
Okay, so definitely opportunity, but we'll kind of wait and see. Okay, thank you. Those are the main questions that I had. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go back to Member Risser.
One, I do love your design. I think it is very, very good. And I like the transparency. I like the dark lines. I think it's broken up enough so that there's kind of a pattern and it's not just a solid box. I do walk in this area a lot, and what I've sensed is there tends to be more pedestrian flow along Eden Avenue. And so I think actually the little pocket space that you are creating, I could actually see people using that. Mm-hmm. And my husband and I were walking along France, and there's that little pocket park north of Restoration Hardware, and I'm like, we need to stop and experience this. But I was kind of wondering how many people actually hang out in the pocket parks that we're creating. And I do actually think there could be people here waiting, to meet somebody to go up to Hilltop. I could see this one actually getting some use. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, we were excited to bring the sidewalk away from the roundabout a bit. We had heard some comments about, just when people are coming into the roundabout, they're coming in a little fast. So I think by bringing the sidewalk a little bit north and away from the curb and away from the edge of the roundabout creates a nice little pocket park area that's a little safer than if you were kind of right up against the edge.
Yeah, that's a very interesting elevation. I think that southwest elevation to give you a real sense of how you connect to what we've done with the roundabout and the crosswalks. And as you point out, Mr. Moran, setting the sidewalks potentially further back away from traffic to enhance a sense of pedestrian safety. I think really important sort of changes that you made from sketch plan. You know, I'm going to bring Mr. Lewis back up here. I forgot to ask him a couple of questions that were fundamental to the work that we do, and I'm sure this was done in conjunction with the development team and the architects. But one of the things that if we move forward on this, we'd have to approve the rezoning to PCD2. And I guess, you know, we know that there's a lot of other properties in that neighborhood that are PCD2, but with respect to this particular piece of property, could you explain why you kind of settled in on the best way to go forward on this would be PCD2 as opposed to PUD or some other zoning classification?
Yeah, so PCD2 is kind of the main commercial district that we've used at Grandview primarily and 50th and France. It is kind of a mixed use district. It allows them to do the uses they're proposing, so office with some kind of possibility for a retail tenant or a restaurant in this ground floor level. It gives them that flexibility where the current zoning would not have allowed that. And as far as whether to do, you know, a PCD2 versus a PUD, we kind of talked about that a little bit at the sketch plan. We, you know, asked for feedback from the Planning Commission and the council, and I think what we heard was that there was a preference to stop using PUD so much and rely on our conventional districts with variances. You know, PUD is a good tool. It gives a lot of flexibility. We have a lot of discretion with it, but I think really it's best used for, you know, really kind of like unique projects that can't fit within a conventional district. Where you can't really write a district, like things that are just like really unique. So this worked well, and yeah, I think it will work for us.
Yeah, and as a result of settling in on that zoning designation, I guess that triggered the variances. So you've got 8 variances that we need to deal with, 8 variance requests. And we know that you, from a staff standpoint, support this and have done that analysis, but I think it would be helpful for others to know what the standards are for a variance and why you believe from a staff standpoint and why the Planning Commission, which voted 8-1 to recommend approval to the council, decided that they would be comfortable with these 8 variances.
All right, so as you mentioned, for variances, we rely on criteria that's outlined in state statute. So that criteria includes the variance would be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance. The variance would be consistent with the comprehensive plan. And then 3 is that there are practical difficulties in complying with the ordinance. The term practical difficulties means the following: that the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the zoning ordinance. That the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner, and that the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. So we analyzed each variance against that criteria. So it's probably 15 pages of the staff report, but I think kind of to summarize, you know, what they're proposing is really consistent with our comp plan. I think as we've kind of talked about, there's a little bit of a disconnect between what our zoning ordinance allows and what our small area plans and what our comp plans envision.
Comp plan guides, yeah.
Yeah, what they guide, right? So I think, and that's kind of why we've relied on PUD quite a bit. So in general, you know, we find that this really advances a lot of goals of the comprehensive plan. You know, they've really done a good job to improve kind of the pedestrian environment. I think injecting, you know, 300 daytime workers into this area is really going to do a lot to support those surrounding businesses. And then also, as we kind of noted throughout here, that it's reasonable and that it's really consistent with what was already approved for this site in terms of the height, the setbacks, floor area ratio, as well as other properties in the Grandview district.
Okay, thanks for that. Member Risser.
One thing, if we could set some kind of policy, because when you look at that chart and you look at the setback variances and you see 2 feet and you're like, oh, and then you see the drawing that has the red line around it, and you better understand that that 2 feet is just a couple pinch points. And I really feel like it would help with transparency if when we have the chart, we also have that image below or above the chart, so people can look at it and go, you know, this isn't a case where the building is going to be, you know, twice the legal buildable area or something like that.
Or 2 feet from the street.
Right. Exactly. But I think, and there are so many people who are visual learners, and you really don't, when you look at the chart, it is so unhelpful.
Yep. Yeah, that's understood. And yeah, I maybe could have done a better job of explaining that too in my presentation, because that's the kind of context we try to give in the presentation. The other thing I would note too, in comparison to the last project that was approved, you know, I think that was not only was it a 10 feet, but it was, I believe, 6, 7 stories along here. Whereas this project, yes, it's 2 feet, but it's just this corner that's 2 feet, and this is only 1 story. The mass of the building is shifted way back from Eden Avenue as well. So that's just kind of another piece of the context that I think helps explain that justification for the 2-foot setback variance.
Thank you.
Good, thanks for that. I don't have any further questions at this point in time. My colleagues, any further questions for? Yes, go ahead. Member Agnew.
Thank you so much. So as we are looking through all of the variance components, the last one, number 8, is a variance from the screening and setback requirements for utility equipment specifically. Can you just highlight that for me on this visual?
Yes. So there's going to be like a transformer located here. Because the utility equipment is greater than 36 square feet, it's supposed to meet the building setback. I believe they're kind of limited by where Excel wants to place it. The other thing is that it's supposed to be screened, and the screening is supposed to be on their property. They're going to screen it, but some of the screening is going to be located within the right-of-way. But they have kind of cut out a notch in the building that it's sort of tucked into, so that helps screen it kind of from some of the other sides. Plus, their landscaping plan shows more vegetation here to screen it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Good question. All right, gentlemen, Mr. Mernan, Mr. Loken, Mr. Axman, stand by. We're going to open this up for public testimony. Mr. Lewis, thanks for the presentation. And as we indicated when we started this conversation, this is a public hearing matter, and people are certainly welcome to testify. Our practice is that you'll have 3 minutes, and you'll get a green light. You can just start speaking. Don't worry about the lighting system, but you'll get a yellow light when you got 30 seconds to go. And then so to make sure that we treat everybody equally from a time standpoint, when you see the red light come on, just try to wrap up your comments so that we're giving everybody equal time. So if you're interested in testifying regarding this matter of whether the conditional use or whether the variance requests and the zoning change ought to be made on this particular piece of property, please feel free to come forward. Not seeing anybody coming forward, not hearing anything. Let's check online to see if you have anybody that wants to testify regarding this matter.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do not have anyone online at this time, but because there is a short delay in the broadcast, I would recommend we wait 1 minute or so, giving people that time to do so. My clock shows it at 7:19. I'll come back to you at 8:20. I'm sorry, 8:19. Back to you at 8:20, or when I have a caller, whichever is first.
Okay. While we're waiting for that, I just want to indicate to people that we've been in the practice of taking public testimony the night of the public hearing, but also leaving it open for further public input to the following Sunday noon. And that can be done either verbally by calling City Hall, leaving a message, or sending something in online. And that's what staff is recommending again in this particular matter, and that's what we're going to do, I think, is that'll be the motion that'll be made, would be to close the public hearing at noon close the public input at noon on Sunday, April 27th, and then continue this for action by the City Council on Tuesday, May 6th.
It is now 8:20, and I still don't have a caller, so I think it's safe for you to move forward with the agenda.
Good. We've got a recommended motion, as I indicated, from staff that we close the public input in this matter on Sunday at noon. That's April 27th, 2025, and continue the action to the Tuesday, May 6th, 2025 City Council meeting. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved. I second.
Second. We've got a motion by Member Risser, second by Member Agnew to adopt the motion as stated. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. The testimony in this matter will be accepted through noon on Sunday, April 27th, and will continue the action to the City Council meeting on May 6th. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Nicely done. And gentlemen as well, thank you. And we'll see you first Tuesday in May. The only other public hearing matter we have in front of us this evening involves something that the city has been working on with the neighborhood and businesses, residents over in the Lincoln Londonderry area. We've done a small area plan over there. And Mr. Lewis has this matter as well. He's worked hard on this from a staff standpoint. We've got some really outstanding people on the Planning Commission that have helped guide this work, and then we've got an excellent outside consultant in Zach Lockram and his group, Men Collaborative, I think, that has done very good work here. This is going to be the same process, I think, that the staff's going to recommend on this particular matter. We're going to have a presentation, we're going to open it up for public testimony, and then we're going to let public input occur until April 27th at noon on that Sunday, and then continue it to the May 6th City Council meeting. So I'm going to turn back now to Mr. Lewis to guide us into this conversation about the small area plan work that was done and the proposed course of action next. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we're here tonight to present to you the Lincoln and Londonderry Small Area Plan. This was a 2024 work plan item for the Planning Commission. Commissioners Day, Felt, and Miranda were the assigned leads for this item. Commissioners Day and Felt are here this evening with us. There was 6 additional members that made up the rest of the working group that worked on this project. Those individuals were Nancy Spanis, Steve Brown, who I see is here tonight, Jignasha Pandya, Corinne Griffith, Jim Diley, and Russ Rubin. The city hired Men Collaborative as a consultant to assist with this project. Zach Lockram is the project manager, and he's here tonight to present an overview of the plan. The plan was recommended unanimously by the Planning Commission on March 12th. The intent is that we would adopt the small area plan as an amendment to the comprehensive plan, which would then require review by the Metropolitan Council. So the action requested tonight is a motion to close the public hearing at noon on Sunday, April 27th, and continue action to Tuesday, May 6th. One thing I just did want to mention real quick before I hand it over to Zach, in the staff report, there was a comment from engineering with some recommended language for one of the recommendations regarding the trail going over 169. When we come back on the 6th, we're just going to revise that language just to incorporate engineering's recommended language, but that is a pretty minor change. But yeah, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Zach to run through the plan.
All right, thanks, Mr. Lewis.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're going to hand it over to the commissioners here. All right.
Commissioner, welcome.
Thank you.
Both commissioners.
Yeah, I think we're both going to talk a little bit here.
And make sure you identify yourself for the record too, please.
My name is Mary Weatherfeld. I live at 4116 Grimes Avenue South. And before I start, I want to acknowledge all of the work that Lou Miranda has done as the Planning Commission Chair for the Lincoln Londonderry Small Area Plan. He worked on this diligently for much of the past year. And only because he's not here tonight am I helping to introduce this report. So how to plan for our city has always been a topic and sometimes intense debate. What can individuals and businesses do with their land? What are the needs of the community, the city, the region, and the state? What are the existing conditions? How is the site currently zoned? Where do we want it to go? If we want to be responsible to residents who live here, businesses that operate here, and to the health and well-being of our children, it is important to take the time to take into all the information that goes into the planning of our communities. We need to identify and understand the place, the people, views, traffic, engineering, infrastructure, shared amenities, land use, and land values. This happens through gathering information from our planning staff, engineering staff, urban planners, and by talking to and listening to each other. This is why our city takes the time to do small area plans. It is both for hearing the residents and businesses and communities, but it's also to allow us as individuals to participate in learning about each other, our city, and how we learn to engage in building our community. I appreciate the city allowing us to learn through this SAP process, and I also appreciate MEND for spending this past year helping us understand. I'd also like to thank MEND in guiding us through this plan and creating a document that is both comprehensive and I feel clearly written. And I also want to thank the people that joined our group. I know Addison already has, but these people were homeowners, retirees, some are currently working, former commission members, new residences, lifelong residents, current business owners, and former business owners. I'd like to thank Jim, Jignasha, Corey, Russ, Nancy, and Steve for taking the time to participate, listen, provide feedback, and most importantly, to share what they have learned with their neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Day, welcome again.
Yeah, hello again. Ryan Day, 6808 Chapel Lane, and a member of the Planning Commission and one of the chairs of this small area plan. So thanks, Mayor Brother, for that introduction piece as we segue into what I want to talk about a little bit before we get into the presentation, because it's extremely important to highlight, I think, as part of this process is the team engagement with the community and how we did that. So, you know, in order to engage with the community and come up with this small area plan, we did a number of things. So we had public engagement events at the Caribou Coffee over there. We had a couple events at Walnut Ridge Park. I know, Mr. Mayor, you were there at one of them, and we actually went and were able to tour one of the small business building afterwards.
Form of public engagement over there at the building.
That's right. That's right. We got a private tour. You know, we did during the Walnut Ridge Park event, we did a bike tour and a walking tour. So I was able to take part in the bike tour where we kind of explained to residents, you know, what the initial thoughts were on things, what a small area plan is intended to do, what the limitations are, right? So it's not simply us coming in and developing the area and prescribing exactly what goes in there, but really giving an overall vision and using that to guide us as we go forward. We did another public engagement piece that was a crucial part of this was a business survey with the different businesses in the areas. As you're familiar with, there are a few small businesses in the area because that is one of the very small pieces of the city that's remained PID. So that business survey, I need to give a lot of credit to Steve Brown, who's here, for really leading that. But we went through and talked to all the different business owners there and said, you know, and asked them what were their plans for the future. You know, what did they want to see? What did the area need the most? So we took that into consideration as well with resident feedback. So very important piece. Once we collected all the engagement or all the feedback from the public, we did several draft reviews with residents, and I know the council as well. We had, I think those were very well done, you know, in terms of how we engage with people. We had kind of really interactive quizzes, which, you know, I wasn't allowed to take part in because I knew the answers right away. But the residents sure seemed to like that. There's a lot of hands-on activities in terms of visioning out the space and kind of saying, all right, if you were to go down 9 Mile Creek and you were to put, you know, a mass transit lane here, or if you were to put an extended curb, how would that actually fit in the area and stuff? So I think that really helped people visualize the space. So at the end of the day, you know, we got a lot of different perspectives, which is a very good thing, right? We really, really tried, and MEND really did a good job of seeking out input and not trying to direct the conversation. Really, you know, wanting to hear from others rather than prescribe what we wanted to hear and just waiting for other people to give that back to us. Very, very well done. And with that, I guess I'll turn to Zach to give the presentation on the plan itself.
All right, thanks, Commissioner. Mr. Lockram, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me tonight. I'm glad to be here, Mr. Mayor and council members, to talk a little bit about the small area plan. As you know, we started this project around a year ago. We did this in 4 phases. The first starting in May and June, we took the time to really work to understand both the community perspective on the site as well as really digging into the data and analysis that we needed to do in order to help think about what could happen in the future. Second phase we called Envision, happened roughly from July through September, and it's where we began to actually present some of the potential ideas for the area and really begin to dig into those with community members in more depth. Finally, in October and December, we brought those more finalized and more vetted ideas back to the community, worked to ensure that we were moving towards consensus about opportunities to move forward and really thinking about implementation steps as a part of that. And now we are here in what we call the adopt phase. We'll talk quite a bit in this presentation about the community engagement. I want to have you understand how the plan itself developed out of the process that we had, but as our commissioners pointed out, we did do pretty extensive engagements. They included a number of community workshops, the business owner survey. One thing that I particularly want to point out is we tried to evaluate along the way who we were reaching and look at whether or not there were potential gaps. So you see, on this slide, the events that happened in July, for example, the pop-ups at the Caribou and the Loden apartments, that was really a response to seeing at the first community workshop, we're not totally sure we're getting the visitor or shopper experience, and we're not totally sure we're getting a lot of renter feedback. So wanted to try and go to specific areas where we could make sure that we were adding that feedback into the whole as we were moving through it. In our first workshop, we really focused on asking people what they love about this area today and what they felt is missing. We discovered that people really love the natural environment. The trail really was the centerpiece and the heart of the community in a lot of ways, in the creek. And then we also heard from community members that we wanted to hear more third spaces. So the use at Caribou and some of the other spaces that actually serve as gathering points in the neighborhood were very, very important to people, and there was a lot of interest in seeing small retail of that type continuing to expand in the area as well. There were a number of other needs and themes that came out of it. We heard about wanting to make sure that we're working on not increasing traffic, that we are looking at ways to make the streets safer and more comfortable to cross and to be around. With regards to housing, we heard kind of a lot of different directions. There was not really a community consensus that immediately emerged when we talked about housing. Some folks feeling that they really wanted to see a lot more housing in that area, others who felt like other uses were better in that. And so that became an area where we tried to continue to receive more feedback and work to clarify some of that. The connection to nature was more or less unanimous, as was the real desire to see community and spaces and businesses grow in that area. So based on this first round of feedback, we developed a set of community priorities in these 6 areas. And from that, also developed a vision statement along with our working group. So in 2040, the Lincoln-Londonderry area will be a welcoming gateway to Western Edina. There will be shops, restaurants, homes, and jobs, all in a natural setting along 9 Mile Creek. It will be thoughtfully and sustainably designed, blending eco-friendly amenities with natural beauty. The area will be easy to get to and move around in, with bike lanes and trails, walking paths, bus stops, and carefully integrated parking. The Lincoln and Londonderry area will be a great place to live, work, gather, fostering community and encouraging people to use the trails and gathering spaces. And then we also wrote priority statements around each of these areas. I won't read these all out loud, but these were really the goals that when we started developing recommendations, we had to come back to and say, are we actually meeting these priorities with the recommendations that have been developed? Now, it was about at this time, and actually coming into the project, we knew that one of the key issues that we were going to face is an issue of sewer capacity, and this has been an issue that had been a topic of conversation in the area for a long time. The key finding here is that the sewage capacity is nearly fully utilized, not just for the Lincoln-Londonderry area, but for all of the area that you see in orange in that western part of Edina. So it's a much, much larger issue than just this area. There are a number of options to help deal with the capacity or lack of capacity for new development in this area. There's a potential to shift capacity on its site. At its most simple, that is, if you have a building with 6 toilets and you take it down, you can put 6 new toilets somewhere else. At its most basic. There is an opportunity potentially to connect some of the parcels to the Minnetonka system. It is unclear whether that would be a short or long-term solution, and again, it would only impact the parcels that are north of Londonderry within the area. Or there is the much larger, much longer-term potential to actually upgrade Edina system within this whole area. So as it relates to this small area plan, that kind of created a large known unknown for us in trying to think about how we would move forward with a set of recommendations. And so ultimately what we decided to do was sort of bifurcate the plan. There's a series of current capability recommendations, things that we can do today that would improve the public realm, that would improve the quality of open space, mobility issues, and other things like that, as well as some potential minor changes to land use, and setting up policies that could influence future development that we can take care of today. And then at a future time, once this has been resolved, which is most likely something that would happen in your next comp plan cycle, there are recommendations that what would we do if this sewage capacity issue were no longer an issue? Those require more major changes to land use and major changes to circulation within the study area. So we took that back to the community and started to have conversations about more specifics around some of these potential recommendations, looking at qualities of open space, looking at types of housing that people were interested, types of urban design that people were interested in, and really start to dig down a little bit deeper in terms of what people were looking for in some of these areas when they were looking at some potential recommendations. So we did also, this was a question that we were getting engagement, so we started asking people what neighborhood they lived in as we were doing both online and in-person engagement, and found that mostly folks were coming from the adjacent neighborhoods, Bresden Park and Parkwood Knolls. The community really prioritized green spaces and environmental stewardship, getting around safely and thinking about the local businesses as kind of key issues within that. And they showed a preference for smaller scale private outdoor spaces, for natural gardens and natural building materials when we're talking about what type of development or open spaces should be in the area. So from this, we developed, as I said, these sort of 2 different directions in the plan, both what we can do today and what we can do in the future. I'm not going to go through every recommendation here. I know you've all seen the report, but this is a summary of the short-term improvements. You'll see that there's quite a few elements that relate to policy and updating city policy. There are open space improvements, there are water quality improvements, there are mobility improvements as a part of this component. In the longer term, we looked at what would development and redevelopment look like, prioritizing the different elements that the community has put forward for us. So this longer term shows some of that. We were somewhat agnostic about land uses, knowing that the market is going to change significantly in that amount of time. So the way that we've drawn this, there are elements in here, for example, putting smaller housing, townhouses specifically, closer to the existing neighborhood, larger buildings closer to the highway, some of those sorts of things. But ultimately, a lot of the buildings, especially when we're talking about the things towards the highway, those could in the future, it could remain light industrial, they could move towards office or commercial space, they could move towards retail, or they could move towards housing, really depending on what the market is looking like at those times. The overall strategy, though, of larger closer to the highway, smaller closer to the neighborhood was very important in that. We also looked at ways of incorporating additional green spaces with redevelopment that might happen in these areas, and really tried to think about the ways that we could improve the quality of the trails, improve mobility, and improve circulation in the area as well. So we brought these final recommendations back to the public, and we did an online, it was a sort of polling technology that we used to really ask people about each of these recommendations. Do you feel like it is matching the community priorities, and do you think it should be a priority for implementation? And so for us, that was just a test with that group of community members to really see, are these recommendations, have we gotten to a place where not necessarily everybody agrees 100% with everyone, but do we have an overall consensus? And are happy to report that we were largely seeing, and I think entirely seeing, that we were well on the side of majority support for these recommendations, and feeling like we had met the goals of actually reflecting the community priorities that had been put forward as well. So with that, I will stop, and I'd be happy to take questions.
Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Lockram. Very, very well done. And thank you again for the work of MEND with our team that worked on this small area plan, our residents, businesses, all the folks that were involved that were named, but everybody that participated from the neighborhoods and the broader community as well. It helped you build a pretty good product here. So,
glad to hear that.
And some nice recommendations. Questions for Mr. Lockram or for the planning commissioners that are present? Member Agnew?
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. And I do want to start by thanking and celebrating the great work of the Planning Commission and all of the work that you did to really integrate voices across the community. And I think that a lot of that was really evident too in the conversation that happened about this during the Planning Commission meeting. And just again, want to emphasize, like, I think from my vantage point, it looks like you did an amazing job of bringing a lot of voices to the table. So great work, and thank you. I have one kind of like specific question just to clarify. So when we're looking at kind of the difference between those slides of the current capacity recommendations, like what I'm thinking of is like being short-term, because then on the next slide you say long-term visioning, is the real distinction, the only distinction between these two, the capacity?
For the most part, yes. There were some things that we sort of also pushed into that capacity dependent, that technically you could do them now, but without having adjacent redevelopment happening, the financial burden of doing it doesn't necessarily make sense. So for example, some of the circulation things, you could do those right now, but without sort of having that redevelopment happening, just fiscally, it likely wouldn't make sense. So we tried to kind of match up the recommendations with how they kind of fit into the community as a whole, to make sure that there was a funding strategy for them, a implementation strategy for them that really made sense based on what might be happening at different time periods.
Okay, and that really helps. And I know that this was also a topic in the Planning Commission discussion about it, but we know that there's capacity constraints. And so I appreciate you kind of delineating of like, here's what you can do now and you should do now, or what this could look like in the short term, compared to once this big open question is solved, this is what could potentially be unlocked. And in some ways, like I heard, I think it was Commissioner Hahnemann, I think like some of her like frustrations as well. And I don't know how we would have gotten around that in this part of it. So I appreciate, and I know that there have been other like area plans that were like, we have water problems, how do we navigate this? So I appreciate having those two perspectives of, here's the vision that we can unlock together as a community if and when we prioritize sewer capacity.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that we heard quite a bit, and it's not necessarily within my memory, but, the trail is relatively new there. For a long time when this was built, 9 Mile Creek was kind of like, that's like our back channel sewage dump, for these sites. It wasn't really seen as that important. The trail has really become the beloved centerpiece of this community. And I think that shows that even without the ability to do major land use things right now, there's a lot that can still be done to improve, beautify, and improve quality of life in this space. And so trying to create a plan that wasn't reliant on something that we can't control quite yet and is quite a ways off into the future, while still saying this place has a lot of value to the people who are living there right now, and there's a lot of things that we can do to continue that improvement even while we're waiting for those answers, I think was really important to us and important in what we heard from the community as well.
And just another thing that I really appreciate with the work that you put into this was concluding this with the, I think what was on, oh, well, I have page 764, the final workshop outcomes. So where it's kind of giving that pulse of how well does this fit into what you are all hoping for? Because I think that the biggest complexity in doing some of these analyses or these projects is there is no way to meet everyone's needs.
Yeah.
We can't make everyone happy. Not every person who is engaged in the process will see the totality of their desires within the final project. And then those are sometimes the people that you hear from, right? Of, well, this isn't exactly what I wanted, and therefore my voice wasn't listened to. And I think that we've often struggled as a council of how do you still engage people and make people feel heard while also not necessarily being able to align to everybody's wishes and desires. And so being able to take this and then conclude it with a numerical, what's the data behind, how do the collective feel, I think was a really, really nice way of doing this. And I hope it's something that we can take on to future like small area planning projects that we're doing, of giving people that opportunity to collectively reflect on how closely does this match. And I would never expect 5s across the board, right? But I think it also is that good pulse check of if it's 2 or 3, like what did we do wrong, or how are we so far off? So I really want to emphasize, I appreciate the emphasis you all took on that community engagement and then making sure that those desires were reflected in as much of a way as possible.
Absolutely, yeah. I for what it's worth, I really love this tool. The images you see, the red number in the dot is the average, but the little slope that's coming is actually the distribution of votes. So, sometimes you get things where there's a whole bunch of people at 0 and a whole bunch of people at 5, and you're seeing that too. And it really is useful, I think, for people in the room, because it does, you could be sitting in a room and think, well, everybody totally agrees with me, and the loudest voice kind of gets it. This really gives you a very quick visual, I can see where the room is at from a wide variety of people. And so we don't know what the outcomes are going to be. I was very happy with the way that this turned out in terms of it. We felt that we had done the work that we were going to be in that range of consensus. But it is a very useful tool. And I even think in that meeting, from the questions that happened before we started this polling to the discussion that happened after the polling, some of the tenor in the room changed. I think people were pleasantly surprised or happy with where they saw outcomes go within it. So it's always nice to see.
Member Risser.
Thank you for all your work, and I echo what Member Agnew has just said. So one of the things that I was thinking about is you're talking about industrial zoned land. But here in Edina, we have allowed a business, the Drooling Moose, to sell product directly to the public.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, maybe this is a question for our attorney, but it seems that with all that industrial land, I guess I don't understand how that is aligned with our code, or if we could create, some kind of industrial zone where you can sell directly to the public. But I think that could be a way to move forward, because it seems like there's a lot of interest in business.
I think that's a really astute element. I know you guys are working on doing some updates to your code. There's been a best practice nationally to move towards what people are kind of terming maker zones, that are something kind of in between that commercial and light industrial as a use. It's actually something St. Louis Park has done a little bit of as well, because even on the retail side, it's been a challenging time for retail, but one of the ways that some retail folks, and actually I think Soda Clothing in St. Louis Park is a nice example of this, is you have your showroom, but you're also selling online and you're making the thing that you're doing on site. And so it really becomes this sort of hybrid. So those types of hybrid zoning opportunities, I think as you are revising your code, could be something that fit really, really well within this sort of area. And even, pushing that to the point of maybe some live workspaces and things like that can potentially fit. There's less of that, there's less barriers to some of that than some of the industrial type uses that were more toxic that we might have had in the past.
And this is a little pie in the sky, but just, I know with the water, this constraint with the sewer and everything, but just thinking about what are those businesses where you don't, they're not a brewery. Yeah. They're maybe repackaging or they're doing something, just kind of thinking along those lines. Yeah. Selling games or something like that. I don't know. But I think a lot of work went into this and a lot of care, a lot of concern. And, what is that? Like a goal without a plan is just a wish. And now we have a plan. Yeah. But my concern is that it be something that doesn't just, end up being irrelevant with a big development. And so there's that. And, just trying to figure out how is it that we move from all of this work. And I mean, you can't necessarily be in lockstep with a comp plan or a small area plan, but there needs to be a way so that it's not just, poof, meaningless. Yeah. So I guess it's just a frustration.
Well, I think some care was taken to try, even, with the visuals or some of the other things that have been produced in this, to hopefully be a little bit of a jumping off point in that continued conversation around the capacity issue as well. I mean, that really is the next step, and the next round of the comp plan is really the time to address that as a community and think about not just what it means for this site, but hopefully some of these visuals are helpful in facilitating that conversation about what that looks like as well.
I really appreciate that. And maybe, coming up with some rules regarding if there was a small area plan, there's got to be some constraints on, how far the variances can go or something like that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
This is a really interesting conversation this evening, and we've thanked you and we've thanked planning commissioners and people that participated in the planning activity, but when you hearken back to how we started this whole process, you have to thank the neighborhood and the neighbors who had the foresight to say, well, wait a minute, we had this proposed affordable housing apartment project over there, and some people liked it, some people didn't like it, but it was never a comfortable sort of part of the journey. Sure. And then some of the neighbors suggested that we think about a small area plan for that particular neighborhood, and that was the genesis of this whole idea. And so in the realm of thanking people, let's not forget about that fundamental democratic method of contacting your city council member and saying, and the whole council, and saying, hey, what about this idea? What do you think about this idea? And it was heartily embraced, I think, because of the difficulties we were having in the assessment of that one particular project. So we ended up in a very good place, and thank you again for the work that you did in helping guide this along. This is a public hearing matter. I think I don't have any more questions or observations at this point in time. But we've got some folks in the audience tonight. Some of them may be from the neighborhood or just have an interest in opining on what's being proposed here, and that is that it's being requested by staff, and I think the folks that worked on the small area plan, that the council adopt the plan and then prepare to send it to the Met Council as part of our work on the next round of comprehensive planning that we're doing. And so we're going to open it up now for public testimony. If there are people here that want to opine and give us their thoughts on this project, we welcome your voice. And thank you for coming this evening, and hope you'll come forward. Okay. I don't see anybody coming forward. I think that speaks well for the work you did. People are pretty comfortable with what took place. So I don't see anybody coming forward to hear anything in terms of who wants to testify in chambers this evening, but let's go to the online world and see if we've got anybody.
My phone lines are also pretty quiet. I would recommend we wait that 1 minute or so to give people a chance to call in if they'd like. My clock shows that it's 8:55. I'll come back to you at 8:56 or when I have a caller, whichever's first.
Thank you. Again, as with the prior public hearing matter, it's being recommended by staff that we let people continue to participate in this process here through Sunday, April 27th, by sending written communication to City Hall. Guess you could do it to better together, Edina. Do it that way. Just calling City Hall, talking to Lynette, having her put you into the appropriate voice box for observation by Mr. Lewis and other folks on staff. I'd be glad to have your opinion after the fact if you don't feel comfortable calling in or testifying live.
All right, I do have someone on the line, but that person is not yet signaling a desire to speak. If you'd like to speak, please press *3 on your telephone keypad. That's the asterisk symbol, and then the number. There we go. Very exciting moment for me. Your line is now unmuted,
right.
Caller. Please go ahead and start by stating your full name and address for the record.
Fleetson at 5215.
There was just a moment. There was just a moment of cutout there. Would you start over again, please?
Absolutely. My name is Brian S. Leeson at 5215 Ridge Road.
Thank you, Brian.
I'm a Parkwood, obviously. Thank you. I'm a Parkwood resident and have a couple of condos down on Lincoln Drive. The one I did go to a couple of the meetings with the community, which happened to be very small, and I've talked to a number of neighbors, and most of the neighbors don't even know what's going on. They think it's all gone away after there was the no rezoning signs that were put up during the when Kent had kind of started the forum with the neighborhood, and I don't think that the neighbors really know what's going on there. And I believe that we can all, I'm in business, we all know that we can pick the crowd that we want to get the answers from, and I don't see any negative comments on this. I see everybody wants this to go through, when in fact, I really don't think they do.
All right.
And I think that I think there needs to be more Parkwood Knowles input on this than just this flying through, with the people that don't even live in Parkwood. And I think the other thing we need to remember is this has been pushed through by, this is started by, from what I'm seeing, the real estate building and the far north building there are kind of left alone, and we're taking out everything else. And I believe that is, nobody could answer me at the meetings that we were still going to not have affordable housing. And are they saving that for last? That's a question for the council.
Sure. Okay. Thanks for that one. All right. Your time is about up, Brian, and we'll try to get some of these questions answered either this evening or when we take this matter up on May 6th. Thank you for calling in.
I have no other callers.
Okay. I think think about this here. Mr. Lockram, why don't you come back up? As I recall from your presentation, the people that were participating were from the immediate neighborhood, so
Yeah.
Brian's concern about more Parkwood Knowles neighborhood input was necessary.
Those were the results that we were getting when we were asking those questions. We did do, lawn signs in and around the park and on the trail. We were actually featured in the Parkwood Knowles neighborhood magazine, which goes to every household in the neighborhood as well. So, we do believe, obviously, there's always opportunities for folks to miss what's going on, but we really do believe that we were hearing a lot of feedback from that community directly. And we were getting some negative feedback at different times in the process as well. As the process went on, I do think that largely subsided. Yeah, I believe we did a very respectable job in making sure that we were hearing from those voices and that we were prioritizing those who live closest to the area as well.
Thanks for that. I think Mr. Lewis also wants to add in what the city's efforts were around the communication.
Yeah, I was just going to add, so we had, of the non-commissioners that were on the working group, we had 6. I think 4 of them lived in the neighborhood. So they had representation directly from the neighborhood on the working group, including Corey Griffith, who was the president of the neighborhood association. So, she had communication channels to people through the neighborhood. I know all the working group members tried to do a good job of making sure that their neighbors were informed. We worked with our communications department. We have, people can sign up for alerts for their neighborhood. We had an email sign up on the Better Together page that people could sign up for to get notified. So we tried to do a good job of making sure people in that neighborhood were informed of it.
Good. Thanks for that. The recommended motion is that we close the public hearing on this matter at noon on Sunday, April 27th, 2025, and continue the action to the Tuesday, May 6th, 2025 City Council meeting. Is there a motion to that effect?
Moved.
I second.
Member Risser moves. Member Agnew seconds the adoption of the motion to close the public hearing in this matter at noon on Sunday, April 27th, and continue the action to the Tuesday, May 6th, 2025 City Council meeting. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. The motion's approved. Motion's carried. And the folks can continue to provide public input until noon on Sunday, the 27th of April, and we'll take it up again for action on the 6th of May. Thank you for that. All right, now we're going to move on to the, that completes the public hearing portion of the agenda. We're going to move on to the reports and recommendations portion of the agenda. And we've got a few matters there to discuss. And the first matter there is the potential issuance of a conditional use permit, site plan, and building height variance for the Southdale Library and Arts Center, which is located at 7001 York Avenue South. And our community development director, Carrie Teague, is going to lead this matter. And then we've got others available for responses as well in the audience.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. You all held a public hearing on April 1st. The Better Together feedback closed on April 6th. There were no new comments. As mentioned, this is a site plan review and a revised conditional use permit for the library and art center. There's also a variance for building height from 40 feet to 59 feet. The Planning Commission reviewed this, and their recommendation is for approval. The vote was 8-0. So the action this evening is for the council to adopt resolution 2025-27 that would grant those approvals. We have Liz Viderko from Hennepin County with us this evening to answer any questions that you may have. With that, I'll turn it back to the council.
All right, we're just going to pause for a moment here. All right, Director Teague has finished his basically his setup on this matter, and has indicated the Planning Commission has approved it 8-0, recommended that we approve it as well, and that is the adoption of Resolution 2025-27, which would be the issuance of a conditional use permit, site plan, and building height variance for the Southdale Library and Art Center at 7001 York Avenue South. Liz Vaderko is here from the county to help answer any questions. And are there questions from city council members, or is there a motion to the, as requested by Director Teague? Is there a motion? Anybody care to make a motion?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Is there a second? We got a motion and a second to approve the resolution 2025-27, which would approve the issuance of a conditional use permit, site plan, and building height variance for 7001 York Avenue South, which is the Southdale Library and Art Center. Any further discussion? Great project. All right. All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Resolution 2025-27 is approved. The conditional use permit will be issued. The site plan and building height variance are approved for the Southdale Library and Art Center at 7001 York Avenue South, Edina, Minnesota. Thanks, Ms. Vaderko, for being here this evening and sticking with us through some of these other conversations that were necessary and preceding yours, but it went smoothly. Yeah. All right. We'll talk to you soon. See you. Next is conversation about Resolution 2025-25 and 2025-34 and Ordinance 2024-05, which is a proposed final site plan and site improvement performance agreement for 7200 France Avenue South. We've got an approved project there, and we've got a revised landscape plan and SEPA to talk about there as well for 7250 France Avenue South. And Director Teague, you have this matter too. So I'll let you begin the conversation. And then we've got folks from Ryan Investments and Confluence here with respect to the landscape plan too that we need to visit with them as well. Go ahead, Director Teague.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So this is a follow-up to the March 18th City Council meeting, again regarding the development at 7200 and 7250 France, PUD 16. So there's 3 action items before the City Council. The first is final site plan and a site improvement performance agreement for Phase 2 of this PUD. That's the 7200 site. That is Resolution 2025-25. With the final site plans, there's no changes from preliminary approval. All of the landscaping and public improvements were actually to be installed as part of Phase 1. And so that gets into the second request, which is a revised landscape plan and site improvement performance agreement for Phase 1. Again, that's the 7250 site. Again, all the public improvements, the sidewalks, landscaping is to be done on the 7200 site as part of that Phase 1. So this is where the builder had removed some of the trees that were supposed to be saved on the 7200 site, and they also went on to private property and removed some trees. Landscape architect Terry Menarek is here to present those revised plans and show the renderings that were requested by the City Council at the March 18th meeting. Those plans include 20 new trees planted on the 7200 site to replace those trees that were removed along that west lot line. And in addition, plantings on the private property. The applicant is still working with those landowners to come up with a final landscape plan. The landscaping and planting on private property is really an issue between the property owners and the developers, and not a part of the landscape plan that's actually being approved by the City Council this evening. City Forester has reviewed the revised landscaping, didn't have any recommended changes for the 7200 site. A letter of credit would be collected for the landscaping, really for, again, both those sites. It will be in the amount of $750,000. There would be no certificate of occupancy issued until all the landscaping has been planted And again, we would hold that letter of credit for 2 years after the landscaping has been installed. We also have other mechanisms to make sure that the landscaping is in place, like the TIF payments. So with that, I will introduce Mr. Minarik, and he is going to go through the landscape plan.
Great, thank you. Terry Minarik, Confluence, 923 First Avenue, Suite 2225. Thank you for having me here today to go through this again. I think the last time we talked about getting you some visualizations to help you kind of understand what we're trying to do. There's been some discussions, obviously, going back and forth with the property owner, Mr. Brown, up in this area, to talk about the screening, but we also felt that within our property alone, there's additional screening that we could do to be able to make up for some of the trees that were removed and enhance some of those as well. So in general, this is a kind of an overall site view. You can kind of see the original planting that was done, kind of the enhanced planting that we'll be doing. There will be additional planting with this that'll happen within this area outside the property line as well in conversations with the owner. But as part of this plan, we've kind of enhanced what we've had in this planting plan before. Kind of a best way to show this is if I could kind of move through the site and made it easy for you to kind of see and understand with the bright red. But this was the existing plan that we currently had in our plan. You can kind of see there's a lot of other green in here that we've added into it, but the original plan included some street planting, some planting along the promenade that goes behind both of the developments, as well as some planting within this wetland area, kind of keeping away from that center wetland area just because that will be primarily wet at certain times, and it'll be difficult for us to grow any larger scale trees within that area that would have stabilized roots. So we're adding in, beyond this, we're looking at, there we go. We will be adding in a series of evergreen trees with the sight lines from these backyards. This being a flatter area, it's a lot easier for us to add some height and size of evergreen trees within here, as well as adding some deciduous trees along the slope. The reason for that is it's kind of a lower slope line. So if we try to plant evergreens and the time they take to grow, it would really take a while for them to get to a height that would cause, be able to provide that screening or that impact. So we feel that deciduous trees would be the best opportunity for that with the high canopy, really providing a ton of screening in the summer. There'd be the branching in the winter, but that was kind of the direction we went, just thinking, trying to replace what was there existing or previous, but with a better version of tree and a higher quality tree that was approached us by the city forester as well. So you can see some of that extended planting that would help to begin to screen that in and block some of the views. There are also an existing canopy that is still there. There's a large grouping of boxwood trees on the corner. There's a series of smaller trees along this edge here that also provide some canopy, and then this larger mass that was never part of the removal that is still intact behind this residence here. The trees that in question were kind of located somewhere in this area here, so we're trying to provide for that screening as well. So that begins to give you an idea of what the planting area begins to look like. We've also increased all the caliper inch sizes of these trees from what they were originally. They were kind of in and around that city requirement of 2.5 to 3 inch to 4 inch trees. We've upped a lot of those up into 5 inch trees, some 6 inch trees as well, and then taller evergreens as well that are part of that, what'll be closer into that 15-foot range as part of the development as well. We were asked to take a look at the rear yard views, what that kind of felt like. It didn't really make a lot of sense for us to show you the view from the 7200, 7250 because that wasn't really critical. What we wanted to get at here was to show you the view of the residence, and Mr. Brown allowed us to get into his property here, one of the yards that was most impacted by the trees that were removed. So what this demonstrates is his existing backyard as it exists today. There is some evergreen trees, some cedar trees planted back here. Some of these larger trees are the trees that still exist there today. So they will have a tree canopy that'll fill in this area. There's some smaller trees as well along this side that'll begin to fill that in. And this is kind of what it would look like today if we did our planting that we're proposing, our enhanced planting. You would get some glimpses through to the building. This would happen as part of that plan. As these trees began to grow up, that would begin to get more and more closed in, but I tried to show something that was more of an early on phase and not something 10 or 20 years down the road. There are some barren spots in the canopy too, but there's also other shrub understory here that'll grow up as well and begin to kind of cover in this lower level as well. So, and then we thought we'd show what that looked like when we did fill in some of those trees potentially in that negotiation with the landowner. The idea of putting some faster growing, higher quality maples in there that could get to a height that would be suitable to begin to close that in. And then also we were requested to kind of see what that looks like in the winter, which is a little different, right? Because this is what it kind of looks like today. The trees are very transparent in the winter, and you can see a lot through it. But you can see some of the branching here of some of the maple trees and the other trees that would be growing in here. But again, over time, the evergreens would begin to get some height, begin to screen some of the building and provide some of that screening potentially for what was there. But, this is very representative of kind of what was there before. And I think as these trees grow over time, they'll kind of get that same kind of representation. So that's kind of where we're at. And I hope that helps. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them on what we're showing here today.
That is helpful. My understanding was that by the last time you were here, we talked about, maybe I should let my colleagues go first, but this question just came to mind. Maybe this might help guide it a little bit. The last time you were here, we were worried about the slope and the trees being able to hold on the slope. And then my understanding was that since then you've had conversations with Mr. Brown about creating a retaining wall, but I didn't hear you say anything about a retaining wall to create a flatter planting area between the west end of the water, I'll call it the holding pond and the property line.
Yeah. So I didn't specifically represent what we're doing with Mr. Brown because we're still in discussions with that. But the intent here is to not plant within his backyard. We did have some previous exhibits that may have been forwarded to you. I don't know if they were. So that kind of showed some of this evergreen planting in his rear yard and some higher up planting here. We decided not to do that because he wanted to keep his backyard the way it is. So what we're looking at now is to actually plant. This is the property line here, this bright red line. So on the edge of that property line, the intent is to provide a retaining wall to be able to give us a flatter area. There is an easement that exists back here, and for some reason within that easement, there is kind of a little bit less slope than there is there. So our intent is to put a retaining wall on the edge of the property line to be able to flatten out that grade, for us to be able to bring in larger spaded trees that'll be of the larger caliper size, 6+ inches in caliper and 20 to 30 feet tall. So those larger trees as a root ball are somewhere around 6 feet. So to give them a flat area to grow in, it would be pretty impossible for us to plant on that slope. So yes, we will be providing a retaining wall in that situation.
Is there an intention to do some planting yet this spring? Or is it after the projects are built out that all this takes place?
I think it's sooner than that, but I'll let Ted answer that.
Yeah, so good evening, Council. Ted Carlson with Orion Investments. We're, as Terry mentioned, fully engaged with the landowner who's most impacted by this to provide a solution on his property in addition to the trees we're adding on our property to his satisfaction. And I would suggest that, I thought, Mr. Brown is here tonight, so I would, thank you. Represent that we will absolutely make best efforts to ensure that Mr. Brown is more than satisfied with the efforts that we put forth to provide adequate screening for his property.
Yeah, thanks for that. I just wanted to also offer this up that Manager Neal and I met with Mr. Brown this morning, and I'll ask you to concur with this. He said we do not yet have a solution, but we're heading in a good direction. Is that kind of the way you think about it too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone knows that we made a mistake, so we got to own it. What do character's a definition of what you do after a mistake, and so I think we will absolutely make sure that we do go above and beyond best efforts to satisfy Mr. Brown.
And thanks for that, Mr. Carlson, because Mr. Brown told us that both you and your partner, Mr. Stafford, have been very, very responsible here, and that you've taken ownership of this issue. So I'm going to turn to my colleagues here now for some additional questions that they may have, because based on the conversation with Mr. Brown and the conversation with you this evening, and understand that we're partway there, but we're looking for some approvals. In the past, I'll ask Director Teague this question. It seems to me that we've approved landscaping plans in the past where we've conditioned final approval of a landscaping plan on its acceptability to the city, and in this case also would probably have to be with the immediately adjoining neighbors and property owners, which would be Mr. Brown and Ms. Stonen. You recall that we've done that before, that we've given you that latitude as a council to...
Yes, the council has, but that's on the developer's property. In this case, this is what's still being negotiated is on private property. So that's really between the developer and the private property owners. But the city is comfortable with the final landscape plan on the development site. But there will be changes on the private property.
Could we, Mr. Kendall, could we condition our approval of a final landscape plan not only on our satisfaction with the plan, but our understanding that there is indeed a plan with the private property owner that's adjacent to this property?
Mayor, at this point, I don't think so, because it doesn't seem like there's a final agreement between the property owner, and I don't think the city could ask them to waive any rights or claims they have. If they should choose not to finally reach an agreement, they still have the option to take other action and deal with it on their own. So
yeah, I may not have articulated what I was thinking about very well, but I was thinking that we condition the approval that we have upon the developer making an agreement with the adjoining property owners.
Well, I wouldn't recommend that, because I don't think the city has control over, whether they can reach agreement on that. The city has site control over the 7200 and 7250 site based on the applications before the city to develop those sites. The city doesn't have any control over the private property, so the city couldn't force if they didn't want to, the city couldn't force the developer to go onto the private property owner's property and plant trees, because the private property would not be permitting that, and the city couldn't force them to permit that.
Let me ask Mr. Carlson then, is there some timing urgency to all this that you're asking us to do tonight?
Yeah, there's certainly timing urgency as it relates to the 7,200 approvals. As we've represented here, we are working on closing on a construction loan in June and starting construction in July. And I think that as we all read and understand what's happening in capital markets, that further turbulence could be cumbersome for us. I would also represent that as far as it relates to the landscape plan, that the city has a $750,000 letter credit and TIF requirements and certificate of occupancy requirements. But aside from all those significant, what I would call traditional financial or legal hammers, what we have is a reputational responsibility. Mr. Brown's been a member of this community for longer than I have, and I've been here for 25 years. And we've known him personally and professionally for a long time. So, I think that I can assure you that we will continue to make robust, significant, and severe attempts to fix this to his satisfaction, period.
So understanding that we're working towards a solution and people think we're heading in a good direction, we could do what we've done in the past, and that would be to have a conditional sort of approval upon having the developer submit a landscaping plan that was acceptable to the city on 7,200 and 7,250. Is that right?
Yes, we believe they have submitted a landscape plan that's acceptable to the city for their two properties.
I think to further that we've added an excess of 20 trees. We've increased the size and significance of the trees, and there's additional trees to be added per us and Mr. Brown to his satisfaction.
Member Agnew.
I believe the primary residence that we're talking about right now is the one to the north. I also believe that the property to the south was also impacted. Can you provide any narrative on the progress that you're making in collaboration with that resident as well?
Our project manager had reached out to that resident without a further follow-up, and I believe that the impact was really only to Mr. Brown's home in the middle and to the north where the trees were taken. I don't believe there was any trees inadvertently taken for the property to the south or any other property for that matter.
Yeah, Commissioner Agnew, the trees that were removed were right in this area right here along this edge. Those were the ones that were removed. Nothing over here was marked to be saved or not. There wasn't as many trees there. And we're well within what was in the first initial plan to be removed. There is a lot of debris back here that looks like we may have done something, but we think that's a different party, and we don't know what the arrangement between the landowners are with that and why that's like that. But there is a lot of debris in this area and along this side of the property as well that we have no relationship to.
Okay, so you're stating that.
But we are still planting more trees here that we didn't really have to, but we are adding them in just for additional buffering.
Okay, so the only private, and I'm also going to look to city staff to confirm this, the only private properties that were impacted by additional trees being removed that shouldn't have been is just the property owned by Mr. Steve Brown?
I believe that's correct, yes.
And technically his neighbor beside that has a limited view, but yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Member Risser.
I did go out and visit with the resident to the south, and he does really feel like he was impacted. And I think what we're getting, it's getting confused by the fact that if we're only counting trees, then your statement holds up. But there was a lot of shrubbery, there was a lot of other vegetation, and that had value, even though, you know, as a screen, it was very much a natural screen. And so now that natural screen is gone. And I would also like to push back against the idea that the only view that matters is from the resident's backyard, because as you are approaching this area, you know, it used to be sort of invisible, all those houses. You never really saw them because of all of the growth that had happened. And now they're out there. And I think that's rather unsettling. So I do think that neighbor to the south feels impacted and that something needs to be done. The other question, but I do have another question, and that is, with this retaining wall, is this going to be something that is there to hold the ground in, or is this going to rise up so it'll be a clear barrier?
It's intended to hold the ground. It will be vertical compared to the slope.
Okay.
But this isn't a place where people go and walk or are intended to hang out. This is a wetland area that can fill with water at any time to quite a depth. So, and this will be on the edge of that wetland area. So,
my concern is, I have two concerns. I want to make sure that the slope that belongs to the residents, you know, doesn't end up eroding. Mm-hmm. And even, you know, some of that shrubbery was holding the dirt in and all of that. Now that is gone. So do we have concerns about erosion, especially with that pond coming in?
So to be clear, there, the shrubbery and everything that was removed from the 7200, 7250 property. And that was part of the original approved plan to remove that. What was in question here were the larger trees that were removed that weren't supposed to be, that were agreed upon, and that were on the edge of the property line. The shrub area that was in there, that was a heavily, it may have looked like it was a dense shrubbed area, but it was a lot of leaves and debris and old retaining wall and stuff that had been put there over time that kind of made it feel like it might have been a more, you know, robust place back there. But whatever was there that was cut down that was of a smaller scale will grow back in any event along this edge. But the intent of the retaining wall is to provide us a flat area to give us the ability to grow a tree. When a box elder grows from a seed, it can establish itself on the side of any pine plant can establish itself on the side of a slope over time.
Mm-hmm.
But when we come in with a larger tree, we have to provide it with an area that can handle the root ball so the root ball is not exposed. So that's what the intent of that wall is. The wall will help actually stabilize this slope and improve the slope. And the intent of the wall is to only be by the properties that were impacted directly by those trees that were removed. The property to the south never had any further tree removal at all on its property, to be clear about that. Any of the stuff that's back there that's open and exposed now was done by somebody else. That wasn't done by us.
I did look through the fence with the gentleman who lives there, and he said, I didn't used to be able to see anything. Now I can actually watch my wife go into Lund's. So it was a very different view that he is experiencing from his backyard. I want to get that out there. The other concern I have is there going to be a clear demarcation of the property line when the project is done so that we don't have people going up onto land that belongs to the residents?
Yeah, I think that can be established pretty easily. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So when you was there a conversation about the debris and stuff that was back there when you did talk to that property owner?
There was a conversation about the plants, the foliage that was no longer there.
But not the stored stuff and the rocks and the stuff that was there. I was just wondering if that was a concern that resident might have had, since we haven't had an opportunity to talk to him.
No, it was, seeing how his view was no longer protected by vegetation.
Okay.
So.
Wouldn't that always be true in the wintertime if it was all deciduous material? I mean, wouldn't that have been always been his winter view?
I don't think so. I think there was more, when you stand and you look from 70, or from, what is it, the street there? And
Bristol Court?
Yeah, well, no. When you're looking at it from 72nd, there is still a lot of, there's areas where you have a lot of growth that is still there. So there is some thickness to it. And so all I know is that he is experiencing his view very differently now. So it would be good to touch base with him.
Okay. So let me make sure I understand where we are here properly. And I know everybody's trying to work towards a common goal here. What I think I heard you say, Director Teague and Mr. Kendall, is that, Mr. Teague, you are satisfied with the landscaping plan that Mr. Menarek has put together that Confluence has put together for the developer. And have you had interaction with Mr. Brown on that?
Not directly.
Because you were only concerned about 7,200, 7,250 where we had control.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And so what I think Mr. Kendall was saying was that if we agreed to move forward tonight and approve this at the next phase so they can get going and get working, Mr. Brown still has his legal rights based on what occurred on his property that shouldn't have occurred on his property.
Mayor, that's my opinion. I'm not giving Mr. Brown legal advice. I'm just saying,
you're not his lawyer.
I'm not aware that he's waived any rights. So unless he has, then he should have all available rights. He can negotiate a deal with Mr. Carlson, or he could sue Mr. Carlson, whatever he wants to do, but he's not waived any rights, and we're not asking him to.
Okay. We're just trying to make sure that we get things properly screened, and it's going to have the supplemental benefit of benefiting his property and the property next to him from Ms. Thonen.
Correct. I think part of staff's requirements and recommendations on this updated landscaping plan were to create additional screening on the 7200 site, which the city has control over, to mitigate some of the issues that, are occurring on the adjacent sites.
And if I remember properly, when you were in here last time, the landscaping plan is really part of the financing of 7250.
Yes, sir.
And so that means, and that's been approved. You're moving forward on 7250. So remind us again then when you think some of this landscaping work would be done on 7200?
Well, I think it's two phases. I think our intent would be to complete the landscaping with Mr. Brown as soon as humanly possible. I think the remaining of the landscaping on 7200 needs to take time as it's related to the relocation of the cell tower, the excavation of the basin, and a bunch of other things. But I think we've got the opportunity to fix the immediate term on Mr. Brown's property for sure this summer.
Okay. All right. Good. That's helpful. Thank you for that. Okay. Other questions from council members? So, Mr. Teague, walk us back through where we are here. What you're asking us to do, and can it be done on a single motion?
You could do them in a single motion, or you could break them up into as many as three. The first would be the final site plan and site improvement performance agreement for phase 2. That's the 7200 site. That's resolution 2025-25. The second piece is that revised landscape plan and basically an addendum to the SIPA for 7250. That is resolution 25-34. And the third item is, and I didn't mention this before, but it's second reading of the ordinance that incorporates the new site plan for 7250 into the ordinance and also reduces that first floor height from 16 to 14 feet. So second reading of that ordinance amendment.
Okay. Mr. Kendall, do you have any preference from a legal standpoint as to how we address this?
Mayor, I guess if there would be any potential for disagreement or no votes, then you could address them separately. So anybody who disagrees with the issue could voice their objections. If you feel like there's agreement on all of them.
That's the direction I'm heading, was to do it separately.
I think that's fine.
Yeah. And so as to 2025-25, there's no changes to the site plan from what was previously approved. Is that correct, Director Teague?
That's correct.
Okay. And then we've got that site improvement performance agreement for 7200 France Avenue as part of that proposed resolution 2025-25. So, all right, let me see if there is a council member who wishes to move the adoption of resolution number 2025-25, which would address the issue of the approval of the final site plan and the site improvement performance agreement for 7200 France Avenue.
So moved.
Is there a second? I'll second. Got a motion and a second on 2025-25 relating to final approval of the final site plan and the site improvement performance agreement that staff has put together for 7200 France Avenue with the developer. Any further conversation on that one? All right, all those in favor of adoption of resolution number 2025-25 as described, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Carried. Resolution 2025-25 is approved.
It's approved.
Okay, and then we're going to go to 2025-34, which is the proposed site improvement performance agreement for and revised landscaping plan for 7250 France Avenue South. Correct? All right. Is there a motion on that matter?
So moved.
Is there a second? I'll second. Any further discussion on 2025-34? All right. All those in favor of adoption of resolution 2025-34, which would approve the revised landscaping plan and site improvement performance agreement, amended site improvement performance agreement for 7250 France Avenue, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. That resolution is approved. And then finally, the resolution, let's see what we got here, 2025-05, which would, what was that, waiving second reading?
It's second reading of the ordinance.
It's the second reading.
Yes.
Approve the second reading. All right, 2025, resolution 2025-05 approves the final site plan and the second reading on, actually just a second reading on the ordinance involved. Ordinance number 2025-05 is what we're approving. Is there a motion to that effect, approval of that second reading of that ordinance?
So moved.
Second, here from the chair, from the mayor. We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Member Risser.
When I think of our process, this is really frustrating because we set up these PUDs and then we define them with a specific proprietary plan. And so there's only one developer who can really benefit from the zoning, the actual zoning. And then we add TIF financing on top of that. So there's only one way that public financing is going to flow. And then we've added Spark on top of the TIF. And so there's a lot of public money that ends up going to just one little area. And then, you try to figure out what exactly the zone is, and you try to look and see what PUD 16 is. And we're formally amending this PUD essentially. And so I feel very uncomfortable with the process that we have, and I just wanted to articulate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Member Risser. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the second reading of ordinance number 2025-05 say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
The motion is approved. The second reading of ordinance number 2025-05 is approved. All right, I think that concludes all of our work on this matter. Okay. And then, yeah, come on up, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Steve Brown, resident or owner of 7205. I just want to make this comment. I've been involved in this city for a long time, and I've been very cooperative in this process, as have the developers. I'm very disappointed in this legal position about the fact that we can't figure out a way to document something in a three-party agreement. Because now what you've kind of forced me to do is say, well, am I going to get an attorney? Am I going to go threaten to sue or try to have some kind of injunction as opposed to coming to a common solution? That is not the way to solve this kind of stuff. All that does is create strife. These guys have been great to have interaction with. We had a conversation this morning, and if there had been a legal issue, you should have said in advance that that should be something that could be addressed. This puts me in a horrible position because, and I'm trying to be cooperative, and you're now forcing me to go to a situation and say, okay, well, I'm going to go out and get my saber, and now I have to fight ugly because I've lost any kind of ability to collaborate using the city's position with the developer. I have confidence that we'll come to a solution, but there's a way, there has to be a way to come up with an agreement that would work in a three-party situation. We talked about it this morning. And our mayor is a lawyer.
Yeah, I thought we had it figured out.
Yeah. So here I come up. I wasn't even going to come tonight. And I was like, okay, well, we got this figured out. And now we got, well, no, we really can't do that agreement. Sorry. Adios. That's not right. And as someone that's given as much as I've given to this community, it really pisses me off. Pardon my French. So I have confidence in working with these guys. Very disappointed in that response. Just going to say it.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. All right, gentlemen, thank you for coming in this evening. All right, we're going to bring Mr. Milner up here now. We've got to talk about the project that's imminent. Starting to do things on this project, I think the end of April, and that is, he is now looking for a request for purchase for the Vernon Avenue Highway 100 interchange project.
Thank you, Mayor.
Director Milner.
Exactly. I'll be seeking that this evening and just want to give an update to the council and anybody watching online. The project goals, we've talked about these many times, so I won't read through them all. They are also posted on our Better Together Edina website with the project links, and I'll give you that here in a little bit. This is the project. It goes from Interlochen Boulevard on the west over to Grange Road on the east. 2 new bridges, one over Vernon Avenue, or one over the CPKC rail line on Vernon Avenue, and then the Highway 100 bridge over Highway 100. This is called a tight diamond interchange, the interchange for the ramps on and off the Highway 100 with the bridge. Big wide sidewalks, new turn lanes in both directions to improve traffic operations. So it's a bike ped safety improvement and traffic operations improvement project. Project timeline, we had some delays working with the rail, but we are now right at construction. So tomorrow we are hosting a pre-construction meeting with a much more detailed schedule. They want to start some work the 21st. The 23rd is April 23rd, next Wednesday, 1 week from today. They want to close the roads and start work on that corridor. The project was bid with a completion date of November 15th, 2025 to reopen those roads, and that's what we're focusing on right now. Just a little bit on the detours. This is stage 1 that'll start next Wednesday. So stage 1 is April 23rd till late summerish, and stage 2, which I'll show, but this just shows that those on and off ramps and the Interlochen Vernon Avenue intersection will stay open for a majority of the project. Of course, things could change. We might see benefits to tweaking this, but this is what we're starting with our traffic operations next Wednesday.
Could we talk about that a little bit? I'm thinking about last summer when we did the work out in front of City Hall here, and we got signage up, and the first few days everything was just a mess, and it did affect down at 50th and France, I think, us doing our work up here, Met Council doing the E-line work down on France Avenue. It just seems to me like those first few days are critical, that you don't just have signage up, that maybe we got people out there too directing traffic or helping people navigate this, because this is going to be really kind of challenging.
Exactly. We are ordering extra signs just to say Grandview District businesses and 50th and France District, how to get around in this. I'll show you an example map. We're going to have maps. We had 9,000 postcards go out to people last week. We got a business-specific landing page to sign up for email updates. Lots of stuff. I've had already one of those weekly meetings. I got another one tomorrow at 11 for people. But we're really trying to make sure that doesn't happen again with some of that confusion that happened when we closed those roads last year.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that.
Stage 2, real similar, just that we're working on Interlochen Vernon intersection during that work. This would be, again, sometime during the summer to early fall. And then the last stages, 3A and 3B, are when it's going to be the most impactful to the traveling public, is when those ramps get closed and they have to either head down the Highway 62 or the Benton Avenue access for local access in this stage, or when they have to go up to Interlochen Boulevard, or not Interlochen, Excelsior Boulevard in St. Louis Park to do this movement, because that off-ramp will be closed at this time. So we'll again publish much information every time there's a change in the traffic control on this project.
So the next one might be helpful. Let's say somebody's coming up Interlochen and they're by the Holiday Station store there, and they're heading for 50th and France. How do they get there? I mean, just walk us through that, would you please?
At the start of the project, you could take Gus Young to Arcadia down to the roundabout. We're going to sign it as use Vernon Avenue to Eden. Eden's going to be your primary east-west connection.
Go straight south past the liquor store, turn right to left on Gus Young Lane, and
you can do that.
And then turn right on Arcadia.
Yep, that's one option. I would suggest using Vernon Avenue down to the Speedway gas station and making a left on Eden. Eden Avenue's got capacity. I would use that facility for any east-west connections between West Edina and 50th and France District.
Okay.
But there will be a couple other options if you know some of the local streets.
Yeah, that's a good route too. Go Vernon to Eden and then go.
Yep, that I think is a better,
Then
there's
go
more
east,
capacity.
past City Hall through the roundabout.
Exactly.
Member Agnew.
Thank you, Mayor. I know we don't probably know the timing of this, but maybe looking at Director Teague, if the Opus project is moving forward, what would be the potential timing of that, the start of that construction, and could this be completed prior to that?
I met with their construction staff. They want to start ASAP, so they're going to overlap if they meet the schedule that they discussed with me a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
We told them they cannot impact Arcadia Avenue.
Okay,
they
so there
cannot
wouldn't
impact
be
the
any
off-ramp.
street closures as a part of their
The only
project.
two is they got to make a water and a sewer connection, and I already said that I would approve a night work, so we don't impact all the other stuff going on here for that one night and those connections. We said you can't close the off-ramp and you can't close Arcadia. The timing just stinks for them, but it's our project, and we got to make sure the public can get around. So great question. So just want to make people aware of where the construction areas are, where you're going to see equipment and materials. All the stars on this are spots where you're going to see equipment, materials spread out. We're allowing them to rent a half the old public works site. And then the X marks or the do not enters. They cannot use the Vonnie's parking lot. They cannot use the Starbucks parking lot. They cannot use Washburn McGravy or Hilltop or any of those. They can't use City Hall. So we have someone out there that's going to be out there every day representing the city, kicking people off of any parking lots if they are related to this construction project. We have signs going around Devani's, no construction parking, no traffic, no materials, none of that. So we're working diligently to make sure those businesses are open for business and their lots are not being taken by construction.
Now, where are you going to have them parked? Down at the old public works site?
Yep. Or on the Vernon Avenue themselves. The big work is building bridges. So they're going to have those middle stars are going to just be available for materials, equipment, parking, all that. Their plan, they want to remove the Vernon Avenue bridge over the rail first so they can haul that material to the east side of the highway where they can stockpile it and reuse it, recycle it, reuse it. Then take down the Highway 100 bridge, which has to happen over nights and weekends. MnDOT won't let that work happen during normal business days because of the traffic volumes. And we'll communicate all those changes of traffic when it happens within all the channels. So what are those channels? Again, Better Together website. Here is the address.
Richard's got a question for you.
Sorry.
Do we need a no parking at Frank Tupa Park for the historic buildings? I know it's a small little parking lot, but is that something that...
I think that's too far away for this project, but we'll
Okay.
monitor that too, just like we
Okay.
did when the development was happening across the street. We kicked contractors out of that parking lot all the time.
Okay.
We have been in touch with the operations of that facility. They know this project's coming.
Very good. Thank you.
So what are we doing? We're communicating in a whole variety of things. We've been doing that already. It's continuing to go up, but here's the Better Together website. I have a meeting tomorrow at 11 a.m. This is a bi-weekly meeting for anybody, residents, businesses, people concerned, want to learn more. There's the website, /Highway 100 Talks. And then there's some specific business outreach again, and there's another website for specific. The postcards that went out have all this information, whether you're a resident or a business. And the map down here is one of those maps that we're using to communicate to the public how they can get around. So you can see the green arrows, green dash, those are all open streets, and the red is closed. So if you get off southbound 100, you can use the ramp. Basically, you talked about that on the earlier project, and then decide which way you want to go on Arcadia Avenue. And the ramps near City Hall will stay open, so you can get on and off the highway there for stage one of the work. And then as those stages change, we'll communicate those changes out to the public. What I'm really here tonight is asked you to award a contract, and I'll just review the costs and the funding one more time. The total project is $28.2 million. That's split between our partners, Hennepin County, City of Edina, and MnDOT. We have $11.2 million of federal funding that's been allocated, and as soon as we start construction, we'll start requesting that money. So that's under contract, under agreements. We're very confident in that funding. City's on the hook after we take away the 4.2 of our federal funding, $11.2 million for the project. Again, that's really close to our June estimate. And here's the recommended funding that we shared with you at a work session 2 weeks ago and again this evening. We're showing about a $5 million municipal state aid, $3 million of debt, and then the $1 million of our utility funds, the water, storm sewer, and sanitary, $200,000 with PACs, electrical budget for lighting, Centennial Lakes TIF. There's an in-kind. MnDOT is providing construction services, testing, surveying, inspection. They're going to have 5 guys out there doing all the work. We're going to have a representative out there also, so they're doing more in-kind services than cash for this project. We also were successful in a $1 million grant last fall, an additional one. We still have a bonding request. You heard that at the work session earlier this evening for $5.3 million. So I put arrows on those 4 funding sources: state aid, the debt service, Centennial Lakes TIF, because that was a question from member Risser last time, and the state bonding. We can adjust this funding table through the whole summer, through the fall, it doesn't matter. So our recommendation is we wait to see how the request goes at the state. We can have the discussion on the TIF stuff with the broader entire picture of the budget that you guys are having. There is a cash balance in there of 1.5 million. That was one of your requests, Member Risser, to understand that amount. And we have that discussion on that. So if we get bonding money, we could have lower the debt service or state aid and just have that discussion with a bigger, broader. I don't need all these today. I need you to award a contract and to know that we do have a way to fund this. So I'm recommending that you award the contract tonight, contract ENG 25-5 to Ames Construction for $22,062,441.03. I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Director Milner. It was quite a presentation. It kind of exhausted me.
I went a little quick.
With this, I mean, just the scope of the project and worrying about people getting around town and doing something is very necessary for our community and for the region. And taking advantage of the fact that the county's taken down that bridge over the railroad tracks anyway. You know, and I think it was good thinking on your part early on. And if we were going to do something, this was an opportune time to do it. So, and then clean up our little mini spaghetti junction.
Yep.
And create some potential space for expanding the civic campus, I think is another great kind of undiscussed part of this conversation. So questions for Director Milner? Member Risser?
Not a question, but a request, because I think there may be a lot of people out there who are thinking, why is the city paying for the bridge over the highway? And if you could just affirm that that is the world in which we live.
Yep. It was our project. We added on, like the mayor said, the county was going to do, go back to the graphic, the project overall. So the counties started with the Vernon Avenue Bridge over the rail, needed to be replaced. That was a infrastructure replacement, needed to be. It was a structural integrity thing. Their project went right up to the Highway 100 bridge. So if they spend federal dollars, we couldn't do any improvements like the mayor mentioned. So we solicited, went through the Met Council solicitation and got 4.2 million. The original plan was to reuse the highway bridge. We could not get buy-in from MnDOT or the county to reuse that bridge for a diverging diamond interchange, which is a unique, you go on the wrong side of the road and then go back. So it's a unique facility just in general, but to really plop it in here would have been really unique. So then we decided that the best case here was to remove the bridge and put a new bridge up. And that's where we're working with our partners right now.
Thank you.
All right. We'll all take a deep collective breath here, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the request from staff, from our Director of Engineering, to authorize the purchase for ENG 25-5, which is the Vernon Avenue and Highway 100 interchange project, awarding the bid to Ames Construction in the amount of $22,062,441.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Member Agnew, second by Member Risser, to approve the motion as stated and authorize the award issuance to Ames Construction for $22,062,441 for the Highway 100 interchange project. Any further conversation on the issue? Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried? Motion's approved.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Next, Member Agnew's been working on this diligently, this inhumanely bred animals ordinance involving the sale of inhumanely bred animals. And we've talked about refining it, and I think it's in a position where Member Agnew is comfortable with how it's worded, how it's crafted. And so, Member Agnew, I'm going to turn now to you for introduction on the topic.
Yes, thank you so much. I feel like I've now introduced this many a time, but appreciate everyone's patience as we've gone through some iterations and as we've gotten some feedback from council as well as from members of the community. So this really started from a local resident reaching out and wanting to make sure that we are able to do what we could to prevent the sale of inhumanely bred animals. And so the discussions that we've had, including conversations with the Humane Society and kind of people collectively, legal. What we have in front of us tonight is, I think, a really good draft that aligns with kind of the input and the advice that we've gotten, and as well as the conversations that we've had as a council. So with that, I will hand it back to you, Mayor. And
All right, yes, would you care to move the matter?
I would.
Or does anybody have any questions for Member Agnew, Member Risser, anything? Okay. So we've got a motion to adopt ordinance number 2025-01, which would amend Chapter 8 concerning the sale of inhumanely bred animals. We got a motion by Member Agnew. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, Member Risser seconds the motion to adopt that ordinance, amending Chapter 8 concerning the sale of inhumanely bred animals. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving ordinance number 2025-01, amending Chapter 8 concerning the sale of inhumanely bred animals, and grant second reading, that included that in your motion, I think.
Yes.
All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. The ordinance approval is complete and approved, and the second reading is granted. Waiver of second reading. Okay, we got that matter covered. And now we are down to, I think, the last action item of the evening. And we are probably getting our city clerk pretty excited here because we're way ahead of her schedule. And the last matter in front of us from an action standpoint tonight is going to be introduced by Manager Neal. And this is the potential direction to the city manager to prepare an agreement with Hennepin County. I'll say again, to potentially transfer assessing services from the city to Hennepin County, with the agreement being subject to council review and approval, is the way I read the motion. So, and we'll talk about that, my observations on this. Okay, go ahead, Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of council. The action that we are asking for from the council tonight is to direct city manager to meet with county administrator or our respective designees to discuss the possibility of transferring our assessing services from the city to the county. We've had a previous conversation about this on March 15th at our retreat, again at our April 1st work session, and then tonight is the proposed action. If the council approves this proposed motion this evening, that will direct me to get in contact with my colleague, Mr. Huff, and again, our associates who will work together to put together the final agreement that will make that transfer operational. We have talked with our legal advisor, Mr. Kendall. He and his firm have worked on a couple other agreements in Hennepin County like this and would be able to assist us with making this happen as well. I think it's important for us to say, it's important for me to say to you that we are not thinking about we're not proposing this action because our folks aren't performing. The folks that do this work for us are high performers. They're good at what they do. This happens to be a division of work that could be done cooperatively with Hennepin County, and it does have the potential to save the city significant dollars in terms of being able to reduce our levy, in our general fund levy in particular in the coming years, as soon as next year and then in the future. So that's the rationale for this request. The county told us that their deadline to hear from city governments was May 1st. That allows them to take into consideration, to receive these proposals of who's interested in following this process. The Maple Grove City Council has already taken an action, and so Maple Grove will be approaching the county or working with the county on a similar kind of move. We're asking you to make a similar kind of action tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Member Risser.
This is just clarifying information. One concern I've heard is that this doesn't necessarily mean a lower cost in terms of the whole assessment process, and it just comes down to how the payment is being made. And so my question to you is, can you find out or get some information on what the, potential efficiencies might be, and if indeed there would be a total cost reduction? So, okay, great.
Yes. And that would end up being part of the agreement that I referenced earlier.
Okay, and the other thing, and I'm learning all these acronyms, which I didn't used to know, but the SLA, the Service Level Agreement. I know that is really important to Member Pearson. He's not here. And so I really do want to underscore that that needs to be a part of it.
Right.
Those are my two big concerns.
I will say I did have an exchange with Councilmember Pierce about the service level agreement. The service level agreement discussion does happen in the next phase of this discussion. It happens in the next phase because that's when the county knows how many cities they are looking at accepting through this process. Whether it's 2 or whether it's 8 makes a big difference to how they respond to the service level agreement discussion.
All right, good. Member Agnew.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask a couple questions and hoping you can fill in some of the blanks in my mind right now. So what I understand is the transition could potentially start in 2026, and there would be approximately $500,000 reduction in the general fund, which would translate to a impact on the percentage that we're increasing our levy, right?
That's right.
And so if we did nothing, we would be on trend, right, for that 17%, which I know is off the table. I know we won't actually get there. But help explain, how does the 500,000 reduction correlate to a 17%? Does it decrease it by a 0.5%? Are we then at 16.5? Does it decrease it by more? Kind of put it in those terms, because we've always been talking about the percentage increase, and I'm just wanting to make sure that we're talking about it in similar terms now that we have the actual dollar value.
Right. So the members of council, Councilmember Agnew, the savings would occur when we don't spend as much money on assessing services as we used to, right? So in year one, there's some, we've made an estimate that about how much we are save, and the opposite of that is how much we'll spend. That could be different depending on when the transition actually occurs. But we reduce our general fund levy by an amount equal to the amount we don't spend if we eventually don't spend it, right? We have to make that decision later on this year when we approve our budget. But that $500,000 number is about a 1% increase in our levy. So it's approximately. So if we don't spend that $500,000 here, it results in a 1% decrease in our levy. When we're in this budget process right now, the early stages, and we're looking for lots of different opportunities for us to save 500,000 here and 500,000 there, because in the end, that will result in a decrease in the proposed levy for 2026.
Thank you, and thanks for bringing it back into terms that I know that we've been discussing it in. And just to clarify, you are asking us to make a decision tonight, correct?
I'm asking you to make a decision tonight, a preliminary decision tonight, for us to engage in additional conversation with Hennepin County that we believe will result in an agreement that we'll bring back to you on June 2nd that you'll be able to approve. It'll be an agreement similar to what other cities have struck with the county over the years. Most recently, Plymouth, very similar to, we would like to get the Plymouth agreement to the extent, not just the service levels that go with that, but also the cost too.
Thank you. So that was kind of vague, which I understand kind of where we're at in the process. So there's two options, right? Tonight we approve or we don't approve. If we say to move forward and tell the county we want to move forward, and then you come back in June, are we, like, at what point are we locking ourselves in, or what are the options after tonight if we do say progress with coming up with an agreement, what are our options then in June?
I would say you don't lock yourself in until the agreement, the written formal agreement is approved by the county and by the city.
Okay. There are people who are employed by the city that are doing this function today.
Yes.
And so can you also speak to me about what a decision tonight means in terms of those employees to the city?
So there are 7 full-time employees that work in our assessing division that are directly impacted by this decision. We have been talking with them to let them know how this process has been moving forward. We would continue to update them about how this process is moving forward. We would probably have some additional discussions with our HR and our admin teams to figure out how do we actually put this forward if you take the action tonight and if the county approves that similar kind of action ultimately with the agreement on June 2nd. So there's going to be some transition issues that we have to work out with that staff, right? And one of those is the county has offered to give preference to folks that work for our assessing division to work in their assessing department if they so choose. That's one possible option for them.
Okay, thank you.
The way I think about this process is, to me, it's akin to buying and selling a piece of property or buying and selling a business. So first you have a letter of intent that's non-binding. And we've kind of got that with that conversation with the county. So the next phase then would be to say, okay, we've thought about this, and now we're going to put an agreement together, and we're going to look at the terms and conditions of the potential agreement, and we're going to decide whether we want to enter into an agreement with you or not. That, to me, is the phase we're at right now, is that we say, okay, we're comfortable enough to go beyond the non-binding letter of intent and say, put an agreement together, we'll take a look at the terms and conditions of it and see if we buy into it or not, and we want to make a deal. But I really appreciate your concern about employees, because we know that as we think about our budget and how to manage, the tax burden in this town that we all kind of own together, these are things that we have to unfortunately think about. And to the other point that you were making, I thought, which was another good one, is I think our assessing division budget for 2025 is about 1.4 million. Mm-hmm. And so it might be that we end up spending we don't know yet about timing things, but we're going to save some money in 2026 if we decide we're going to do this. And then beyond that, we're going to spend money with the county, but that cost is going to get spread across the whole county and not just on the taxpayers of
That's
Edina.
right. So that spread over of an estimated market value of 225
250 billion, I think,
like
instead of 18 billion or whatever we have. So to me, it's worth going to the next step to see if there are terms and conditions in a potential agreement that would cause us to say, okay, we're good to go or we're not good to go. So it's like step 2 in the process.
It is. I think that's a good analogy.
Yeah. So I would say that the motion should be to direct the city manager to prepare an agreement with Hennepin County to potentially transfer assessing services from the city to Hennepin County, conditioned upon council review and approval.
Approve of your edits. I think they're very good.
What do you have, a mover?
Oh.
Which one was the mover?
I move we
Okay.
approve with the edits you just gave. Yes.
Adopt the motion as stated. Okay, and we got a second from
second.
Member Agnew.
And if I could just add a little bit, I'm glad that we'll be able to continue to think about this decision and get more information, because I think specifically the SLAs, the experience side of this that we're thinking about for our residents is incredibly important to me. And I know that was really what I heard when we were having the discussion with the assessing department here. What I continue to go back to is we're potentially talking about a 1% to 2% component of the levy, right? Which impacts everyone. And when I was having some conversations with people in the community, like, it is a smaller subset. I don't know the exact numbers. Maybe that's something that we could come back with as well. But how many people are interacting with the assessing department and needing to resolve things? I'm really looking at what's the overall impact to the entirety of the community. And so that's where I'm supportive of continuing to move forward, but I really want to understand the service level impact and how we can boil it down to the cost of that, right? I think that's what it comes down to. So I am definitely hoping to hear from more people in the community as well about this in particular, but we'll support it tonight. So.
Okay, good. Thanks for those supplemental comments. Anything else, Member Risser?
No.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to direct the city manager to prepare an agreement with Hennepin County to potentially transfer assessing services from the city to Hennepin County, subject to council review and approval of such an agreement. Any further conversation? Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. The motion is approved. All right. I'm just going to jump by commission correspondence. I don't think we've had anything come in supplementally that we need to be mindful of. You would have told us, Clerk Ellison, if there was something we needed to be mindful of. And then manager's comments.
I don't have any comments, Your Honor, beyond the two items that I included in the packet tonight. One was some background on the city's participation in the ICWC program. And the other was a response to, I think, some questions that Councilmember Risser asked about the SPARK program and where the money came from and where it might go and what options might be available to the city if the projects that we pledge that money to don't actually come to fruition. And that's all I've got.
Okay. Member Agnew, anything for the good of the order?
Not tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Member Risser?
Yeah, and this is inspired by what happened tonight and with Mr. Brown. And I am concerned about our residents who live next to commercial zones. And this is not the first time a project has come in. And one of my friends moved from Edina, and she was living next to commercial land in Edina. Her easement that allowed her to access her garage was completely cut off from her for almost a year. And that meant in the city, there was nothing. She couldn't get help. She tried, and when she came to City Hall, I think she may have ended up talking to somebody who was not familiar with the project, but after I met her and we went back and we reviewed the meetings that covered the plan for the daycare next to where her house was, it was very clear that the planning commissioners were concerned about her easement and her keeping access. It was clear that the city council brought it up, but nothing was done to protect her. And she couldn't, she would have had to hire an attorney. And I really feel for her. I feel for Mr. Brown. I feel for the resident who is south of Mr. Brown's property. And I don't know what the answer is, but we need to figure out a way. And part of what we just talked about with assessment and, how we heard about a resident coming in and needing help and the resident got help. We need to figure out a way so that we can help residents who end up, in situations that they shouldn't be in, because they're not being treated fairly. And, how are we going to be able to address that, I think is a huge question. And I get that, it's a legal matter between the resident and the builder, but I also get that, this happens, and it seems like we should be prepared so that, maybe we can connect a resident with a firm that does pro bono, or at least have some information about legal resources, legal aid. But it feels like we need to do something. Thank you.
Thank you. Couple of things. I think all these years I've been on the city council, I don't know if we've ever operated with 3 people before. It was quite a novel experience, but it was a good one. Yeah, thank you, both my colleagues, for helping me get through the evening here. It was a lot of heavy agenda items, important agenda items to deal with. Our colleagues, people have full-time jobs that sometimes take them out of town, like Member Pierce, and that was the reason he was gone. And for our colleague Carolyn Jackson, I think her mother passed away about a month ago, and now her dad's passed away down in Des Moines, and so that's where she is, and she indicated that it was okay for us to reference at this meeting. The reason was she wasn't able to attend this evening, and that and she's down there taking care of some state matters with her dad, who couldn't live without her mom. So I think we'll probably have a full slate on the 6th of May of council members. Hopefully, yeah. Knock on this thin piece of wood here. And I thank everybody that came tonight. It's great to celebrate the teams in Edina that win these state championships. So the swimmers and divers, it was fun to have them here. And then Bob Thompson and Jack as well with their new book. And Manager Neal, I don't know if you have a copy of this.
I've got a signed copy.
Oh, you got a signed copy? Because I've got one at home, and I don't know, do you have some, Jennifer, for our missing council members? And do you need one, or should there be one at City Hall? Because I've got...
We've got a couple, actually.
Do we? Yeah, well, maybe I can find somebody else to give it to. There's an Edina Give and Go event coming up at the end of the month. Maybe I can stick this in the silent auction, and they can raise a little money with that. That's all I had. We had a long tab meeting today, and always something coming up to deal with for the city. And Chad, we wish you the best, and I'm sure we're going to get calls. So please mark it and have people available to help those first few days, especially. I got caught in that mess on 94 going between Minneapolis and St. Paul one of the first few days. That was just unbelievable how bad that was. And it continues to be bad, so people need to find alternative routes. All right, that's it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Member Agnew moves we adjourn, and Member Risser endorses that idea. I do as well. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. Motion carried.